The third time my father read one of my mother's sentences from my sister's letter, I stopped pretending I might be mistaken. "Your kindness always comes with an invisible ledger," he read. Across the Sunday dinner table, Mom lowered her eyes as if the words had wounded her too deeply to hear twice. Paige's chair was empty. The roast I had cooked sat between us, still ticking softly in its foil. Dad held 3 printed pages in both hands. Mom had placed a second copy beside my plate, squared neatly with the fork like a menu offering humiliation as the evening special. I knew that phrase. Invisible ledger. Mom had used it 6 years earlier when I asked why Paige had borrowed $800 from me, but posted photographs from a resort before paying it back. Paige hadn't been there for that conversation. Dad continued, "You have a way of poisoning every kindness with conditions." That one was even older. I looked at Mom. "Did you write this?" She pressed her lips together and gave Dad a small, sorrowful nod, encouraging him to keep reading. And that was when I understood that whatever this dinner was supposed to fix, Paige wasn't the only person who had decided I was the problem. Dad cleared his throat. His reading glasses had slipped halfway down his nose, but he didn't push them back up. He wore the blue plaid shirt I had given him for Christmas, the one with snaps because the arthritis in his fingers made buttons difficult. There was something almost impressive about being ambushed by a man wearing a shirt I had chosen to make his life easier. "Nora," he said, "please let me finish." Why? Because Paige took the time to put her feelings into words. Paige took the time to put Mom's feelings into a 12-point font. Mom's head came up. That is exactly the kind of remark she was afraid you would make. Then she predicted the future beautifully. Where is she? She didn't feel safe being here. I stared at Paige's empty place setting. Mom had still put out the white wine Paige liked and the cloth napkin with the yellow embroidered flower because Paige once said the plain green ones felt scratchy. If my sister was too frightened to attend, apparently her preferred napkin needed protection in her absence. Dad set the pages down but kept one hand on them. "We thought it might be easier this way," he said. "We?" Mom answered. "Your father and I." "And Paige?" "Of course, Paige. Is she listening on the phone?" Mom's eyes flicked toward the kitchen counter. Her phone was face down beside the ceramic rooster. It might have meant nothing. It might have meant Paige was on speaker with the volume off. In my family, you could never tell whether an object was just an object or part of a committee. I pushed my chair back far enough to see the counter more clearly. Mom reached over and touched Dad's wrist. "Keep going, Robert." He looked at me. For 1 second, I saw the version of him who used to sneak me powdered donuts on Saturday mornings and tell me not to let my mother catch us making a mess. Then his face settled into the careful, tired expression he wore whenever peace required me to lose something. He picked up the pages again. The letter began with Paige saying she loved me. That was how all serious injuries in our family started. "I love you, but I'm proud of you, but nobody appreciates you more than I do, but..." According to the letter, living with me after her divorce had revealed a side of me she had spent years trying not to see. I had made her feel monitored, judged, indebted. Every meal I cooked had carried an expectation, though the letter never said what that expectation was. Every time I asked when she planned to move her boxes, I was reminding her that my house had never really been her home. I folded my napkin in half, then in half again. Mom watched my hands. Dad read a line about the guest room television. I interrupted. She took it. He stopped. "The television?" I said. "The one from the room she says was never hers. She took it when she moved." Mom sighed. "It was an old television. I didn't say it was a good television." "Nora, I'm just trying to understand the legal system inside this letter. If the room wasn't hers, why was the television?" Dad rubbed his forehead. "This isn't about a television." "No, I'm pretty sure that paragraph was specifically about the television." Mom leaned back in her chair. "Do you hear yourself? You turn everything into evidence." It was a good line. She said it softly, almost with admiration, as though she had finally caught me performing the crime she had described. I looked down at the second copy. The paper was warm near the bottom from sitting beside my dinner plate. There were no handwritten corrections, no signature, nothing that would tell me where Paige stopped and Mom began. The first page opened with a memory of the night Paige arrived at my house carrying 2 suitcases, a floor lamp, and a grocery bag full of shoes. The actual night had been raining. Paige had called at 10:47 and said she couldn't stay in the apartment with Mark for 1 more minute. I had been in bed. I drove across town in pajama pants and helped her fit the suitcases into my trunk while she stood under the awning smoking a cigarette she claimed was her last one. She cried during the drive, then apologized for getting mascara on my seatbelt. "You can stay as long as you need," I told her. She stayed 11 months. The letter said I had repeated that sentence later with a pointed tone that made her realize I was keeping track of every day. I had repeated it once during month 9, after she accused me of rushing her because I asked if she had heard back about a condo application. Apparently, tone could retroactively evict someone. Dad moved on to the anniversary dinner. That was where the letter grew ambitious. I wasn't merely a difficult sister anymore. I was a woman using our parents' 45th anniversary to control the entire family. I had decided the party should be in my backyard because I wanted everyone on my property, under my rules, beholden to my schedule. "That's not why," I said. "We know," Dad murmured. "Do you?" Mom gave a weary little smile. "Nora, nobody is saying you haven't worked hard." There it was. The sentence that came before she explained why my work no longer belonged to me. The party was at my house because Mom's living room held 12 people comfortably and 30 people if nobody needed oxygen. Paige's condo had 1 parking space and a homeowners association that sent her a warning when she hung a decorative wreath 2 days before the approved holiday period. The restaurant Mom liked wanted a deposit she called obscene. My backyard was free, level, and close enough to the downstairs bathroom that Dad wouldn't have to manage steps. I had arranged tables, chairs, linens, catering, and a canopy in case it rained. Paige had chosen cream tablecloths after rejecting white as too wedding and green as too conference. She had also created an online inspiration board containing 400 photographs of candles. But in the letter, the party had become my kingdom. Dad read, "You confuse being needed with being loved, and when we don't need you in the exact way you demand, you punish us by withdrawing warmth." My folded napkin slipped out of my fingers. Mom had said that to me when I was 31. I remembered the room, her kitchen, before the remodel, the old fruit pattern wallpaper behind her. Paige had forgotten Mom's birthday dinner because she had gone to a concert in Baltimore. I had cooked, cleaned, brought flowers, and listened to Mom complain about Paige for 2 hours. When I finally said I didn't want to hear any more excuses for her, Mom turned on me. "You confuse being needed with being loved." I had never told Paige. I hadn't told Dad either. For a moment, the only sound was the refrigerator humming in the kitchen and the faint crackle of roast juices cooling inside the foil. Dad reached the end of the page and took a sip of water. I looked at Mom. "That sentence isn't Paige's." She didn't blink. "You don't get to decide which feelings belong to your sister. She wasn't there when you said it. People can reach the same conclusion independently, word for word. You're focusing on language so you don't have to face the substance." Dad made a small motion with his hand. Not quite a warning, more like he was asking me to lower my voice, even though Mom was the one whose words had just been smuggled into the room under my sister's name. I turned to him. "Did Paige send this to you?" He looked at Mom. That was an answer. Mom straightened the edge of her placemat. "Paige sent me some thoughts. She was emotional. I helped her organize them. Some thoughts. She asked for help. Did she write any full sentences?" That's insulting. It's also a pretty simple question. Dad's chair creaked as he shifted. The important thing is that the letter reflects how Paige feels. "Then why isn't Paige reading it?" "Because you intimidate her," Mom said. I laughed once. I didn't mean to. It came out dry and ugly, and Mom's expression changed immediately, as if I had handed her another piece of evidence. Paige was 35 years old. She had once argued with an airline employee for 40 minutes over a $7 seat assignment. She had told a divorce attorney his tie made him look dishonest. She had moved out of my house while I was at work, taking a television off its wall mount and leaving half a container of shrimp in the refrigerator with the power strip switched off. But apparently asking her for my key had reduced her to written testimony from an undisclosed location. "What does she want?" I asked. Mom's face softened, which worried me more than the anger. "She wants accountability." "For what?" "For making her feel that your help was conditional." My help was conditional. The condition was that she eventually stopped needing it. Dad winced. Mom reached for her water. "And the key?" "What about it? You gave her a deadline. I'm leaving for Boston on Thursday. I want my house key back before I travel. Because you don't trust her. Because she doesn't live there. She lived there almost a year. And now she lives somewhere else. That's usually when keys move." Dad placed the letter flat on the table. "Could we eat first and discuss this calmly?" I looked at him. "You read 3 pages about my personality before letting me take the foil off the roast. I suggested after dinner," he said quietly. Mom shot him a look. It was so quick I might have missed it if I hadn't spent my entire life monitoring weather changes at this table. Something inside me went still. Mom had planned the order: Paige's empty chair, the untouched wine, the duplicate letter beside my plate, Dad's reading glasses already on when I walked in. They hadn't invited me to dinner and stumbled into a difficult conversation. They had staged one, and they had asked me to bring the main course. Mom slid the second copy closer. "Take it home," she said. "Read it when you're less defensive. Then you can write Paige a sincere apology before the anniversary." I looked at the letter, then at the roast. The smell of rosemary had filled the room. I had stopped at 3 stores that morning because Mom said the first cut had too much fat and the second looked dry. There were potatoes underneath it, the small yellow ones Dad liked, and carrots I had sliced lengthwise because Mom said coins looked cheap. "What exactly am I apologizing for?" I asked. Mom spoke gently. "For using everything you do for this family as leverage." I stood and picked up the roast pan. Dad stared at me. "What are you doing?" "If everything I do becomes a weapon," I said, folding the foil tight around the handles, "I think the safest thing is to stop handing me ammunition." Mom's chair scraped back. "Nora, don't be childish." I tucked the second copy of Paige's letter under my arm. Then I carried dinner out the front door. Mom followed me onto the porch in her slippers. The porch light caught the silver threads in her hair and turned them almost white. She crossed her arms against the cold but didn't go back for a sweater. Behind her, Dad remained at the table, visible through the front window with his hands resting on either side of his empty plate. "You're taking your father's dinner," she said. "I cooked it. For all of us. And then you served me a letter." Her mouth tightened. "You're proving Paige's point. That should make everybody happy. Nora, come back inside." The foil burned through my sleeve. I shifted the pan to my other arm. "Is Paige on your phone?" "No. Was she?" "That isn't the issue." It was Mom's favorite answer when the truth was yes, but she didn't like the question. The front door opened behind her. Dad stepped out, one hand gripping the frame. He wasn't using his cane because he hated letting me see him use it, as if his knee pain were somehow more official when I wasn't around. "Leave the roast," he said, "please." The request landed differently from Mom's command. Dad had always been good at sounding reasonable inside unreasonable situations. "I'll bring you something tomorrow," I said. Mom turned toward him. "She is not going to reward this behavior by showing up tomorrow as if nothing happened." Dad looked from her to me. It was such a small exchange, but there it was. Even my attempt to feed him had to be processed through Mom before anyone could accept it. "Okay," I said. "Then I won't." I carried the roast to my car. Mom came down one step. "If you leave now, don't expect us to pretend this didn't happen." I opened the passenger door. "That's the first reassuring thing you've said all night." The duplicate letter slipped from under my arm and scattered across the driveway. Page 1 landed face down near my tire. Page 2 skated beneath the car. Page 3 stopped at Mom's slipper. Neither of us moved for it. Finally, she bent and picked it up. She looked at the page, then held it toward me without meeting my eyes. At the bottom, beneath the last paragraph Dad had read, was a sentence in italics. I hope someday Nora learns that love is not obedience. Mom had said almost the same thing to me in her old kitchen. The fruit wallpaper had been behind her, and one cabinet door had hung crooked because Dad kept promising to fix the hinge. I remembered all of it because I had gone home that night and written the sentence in a notebook, trying to understand why it hurt so much. Mom watched me read it. "You think everything belongs to you?" she said. "Even my own conversations? Paige has had these feelings for years. Then she should know how to say them." I crouched to retrieve the other pages. The roast shifted on the passenger seat, releasing a wave of rosemary-scented steam into the car. Dad called from the porch, "Elaine, come inside, it's cold." Mom didn't move. I reached under the car for page 2, smearing dirt across my cuff. When I stood, she was still looking at me with the expression she used when I disappointed her in a way that frightened her. Anger on the surface, something less certain underneath. "You have no idea what your sister has been going through," she said. "She lived in my house for 11 months. That isn't the same as understanding her." No. Apparently, understanding her happens when she isn't in the room. I got into my car and shut the door. My phone began vibrating before I reached the end of their street. Mom's name lit the dashboard, then Dad's, then Mom's again. At a red light, a message from Paige appeared. "I heard you walked out. Not I heard they read my letter. Not, are you okay?" She made it sound as if the evening had begun with me standing up. I set the phone face down in the cup holder. At home, I carried the roast through the kitchen and into the mudroom because I couldn't stand the smell of it anymore. The room was crowded with Paige's belongings. 4 cardboard boxes leaned against the washing machine, each labeled MISC in her looping handwriting. A floor lamp without a shade stood in the corner. 2 framed prints were wrapped in one of my bath towels. She had taken the wall-mounted television but left a plastic tub containing 3 separate remote controls. That was Paige. She could remove the object and leave behind its dependencies. I put the roasting pan on top of the dryer and went upstairs. The guest room door was open. Pale rectangles marked the carpet where her furniture had been. The empty television bracket tilted slightly downward. 2 metal arms extended toward the room like it expected an explanation. On the dresser, she had left a chipped blue coffee mug filled with pennies, a dried-out mascara wand, and my spare house key. I picked up the key. For one hopeful second, I thought she had returned it without telling me. Then I saw the purple plastic cap. That key belonged to my back door. Paige had borrowed it years earlier when she watered my plants. The key I had given her after the divorce had a plain brass head and a tiny nick near the bottom, where Dad's old key cutter had caught. She still had it. My phone vibrated again. Mom had left a voicemail. Dad had left too. Paige had sent another text. This reaction is why I couldn't be there. I called her. She declined the call after 1 ring. I called again. This time it rang long enough to let me picture her watching my name on the screen in her new condo, probably sitting on the cream sectional Mom had called impractical before paying for half of it. Her voicemail picked up. "Hi," Paige's recorded voice said brightly. "You've reached me, but not really." I waited for the beep. "Did you write the letter?" I hung up. She texted less than a minute later. I told Mom how I felt. She helped because I was upset. I typed, "Did you read the final version?" The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. "You're doing it now." Doing what? Interrogating every detail so you don't have to hear me. I sat on the edge of the guest bed. She had taken the comforter, leaving only the fitted sheet, which was inside out. The elastic seam showed all the way around. I wrote, "Did you tell them to read it to me while you stayed home?" No answer. "Did you know they were doing it tonight?" The 3 dots didn't return. I set the phone beside me and unfolded the pages. Reading the letter silently was worse. Dad's halting voice had softened some of it. On paper, the sentences were clean and certain. There were no pauses where Paige might have doubted herself, no crossed-out words, no fingerprints. Mom had taken whatever hurt Paige gave her and polished it until it could be displayed. Some parts were undeniably Paige. The paragraph about my sighing, for example. Paige wrote that I used silence to make people feel stupid. She described how I would inhale through my nose, look away, and begin wiping a counter that was already clean. I wanted to dismiss it, but I could see myself doing exactly that. I had done it when she spent $400 on a vintage chair 2 weeks after asking me to cover her car insurance. I had done it when she called Mark toxic on Tuesday and invited him into my kitchen on Saturday. She said living with me felt like taking a test she had never agreed to take. That sentence sounded like her. Then the next paragraph said I turned sacrifice into surveillance, which sounded so much like Mom I could hear the ice clinking in her water glass. The letter moved back and forth between them. Paige's bruised, messy anger would surface for a line or two. Then Mom's language would come down over it like a fitted cover. I couldn't separate them without asking Paige, and Paige had already decided questions were violence. Near the end, the letter mentioned something I had told Mom privately in January. I had admitted I was tired of being the daughter who lived close enough to be useful. Mom had cried and asked whether helping Dad was really such a burden. I said Dad wasn't the burden. The assumption was, I told her I was afraid that if I ever needed anything, everyone would discover they loved me best when I was carrying something. Now, Paige's letter said I resented being the capable one while secretly building my identity around it. I read that paragraph 3 times. Then I went downstairs, removed the roast from the mudroom, and ate 2 carrots over the kitchen sink. They were cold in the middle. Dad's first voicemail asked me to call when I got home. His second said, "Your mother is very upset," followed by 7 seconds of silence, as if he had forgotten there should be another half to that sentence. Mom's message was longer. "You left your father without dinner, Nora. Whatever you think happened tonight, that was cruel. I am asking you to take a breath and not make any decisions while you're angry. Paige is willing to talk after you've reflected. We all love you. But love doesn't mean allowing you to avoid accountability." I replayed the phrase, "not make any decisions while you're angry." For 11 months, every decision concerning my house had been postponed because Paige was sad. Now I wasn't allowed to decide anything because I was angry. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. The anniversary folder was pinned at the top of my desktop. Inside were the guest list, rental agreement, catering estimates, seating notes, photographs of the backyard, and Paige's candle board. 32 guests had confirmed. The chair company needed final numbers by Wednesday. The caterer's next payment was due Friday. There was also a document called Master Tasks. I opened it. Everything highlighted yellow belonged to me. Everything highlighted pink belonged to Paige. The page was almost entirely yellow. Paige's pink tasks were choose candles, confirm playlist, order guest book, and ask Mom about lipstick color. I laughed hard enough that a piece of carrot went down wrong. The sound turned into coughing. I stood alone in my kitchen, one hand braced on the counter, tears running down my face for reasons that had almost nothing to do with the carrot. When I could breathe again, I changed the venue line from Nora's backyard to TBD. Then I closed the file. I didn't trust myself to send anything that night. Sleep came in shallow pieces. Every time I drifted off, I heard Dad reading Mom's sentences in Paige's name. At 6:30, I made coffee and opened the anniversary folder again. Nothing looked different in daylight. I wrote one email to the 3 of them. I attached the vendor contacts, agreements, payment schedule, guest list, and task sheet. I explained that the existing reservations could still be used if someone assumed responsibility for them. The caterer was available. The tables and chairs were available. My house was not. I read the message twice and removed 3 sentences that sounded like they wanted an argument. Then I added one final line. Since my involvement has made the anniversary feel controlled, I am stepping away from planning it. I pressed send. Mom called before the confirmation message disappeared from my screen. I let it ring while I searched for a locksmith. The locksmith could come Tuesday between noon and 4. I booked the appointment while Mom's call rolled into voicemail, then added a note asking him to replace both exterior locks instead of rekeying only the front. It cost more, but Paige had copied keys before, not maliciously, casually. She had once made one for Mark because it was easier than opening the door when he visited. At 7:12, Mom called again. At 7:14, Paige replied to my email. "Are you serious?" At 7:16, Dad called. I answered him. "What's wrong?" There was a pause. "Good morning to you two. You don't usually call before 8 unless something's wrong. I've been awake since 5. "Why? Your mother has been awake since 4. That was not an answer, but it did identify the emergency. I poured more coffee and leaned against the counter. "Did you read my email?" "Yes." "All the documents are there. I'm not calling about documents. Then we can have a nice conversation." "Nora." Dad said my name with a tired warning in it. He was the only person who could make 2 syllables sound like a hand resting on a fire alarm. "Your mother believes you're canceling the anniversary party." "I'm not. You remove the venue. I remove my house. That was the venue. Now it isn't." He exhaled slowly. "Do you really think this is proportionate?" I looked through the glass doors at my backyard. The patio still had blue chalk lines where I had measured for the canopy. I had moved 2 shrubs because Mom worried guests might brush against them and stain their clothes. A string of sample lights hung beneath the eaves, one corner sagging where the adhesive hook had failed. "Dad, the letter said, I was using the party to control everybody. I know what it said, so I'm not controlling it anymore. You know that isn't what Paige meant." "Do I?" "She meant how you make people feel." "What does that mean in practical terms?" "It doesn't have to mean anything in practical terms. That's convenient." He went quiet. I heard a cupboard close on his end, then Mom's muffled voice. He answered her without covering the phone. "I'm talking to her." Another muffled sentence. "No, Elaine. Let me." A chair scraped. I imagined him lowering himself at the kitchen table, favoring his right knee. I wanted to ask whether he had taken the anti-inflammatory pill he was only supposed to use with food. The question rose automatically, polished by years of repetition. I swallowed it. "Did you read the letter before dinner?" I asked. Dad coughed. "Your mother showed it to me." "When?" "Saturday." "And you thought reading it at the table was a good idea? I thought you and Paige needed to clear the air." "Paige wasn't there. I was told she might come." "By who?" The silence lasted just long enough. "Your mother said Paige was undecided. So you put on your reading glasses before I arrived just in case?" He ignored that. "I would not have chosen every word, but you read every word. Nora, I'm trying to tell you I understand why you're upset. No, you're trying to get me to put the party back in my yard without saying the dinner was wrong. That is not fair. It's very specific." Mom's voice sharpened in the background. Dad said, "I'm handling this, louder than necessary." He was not handling it. He was standing between 2 locked doors, knocking politely on mine because he knew Mom's would never open. "Couldn't we keep the venue and let Paige manage the rest?" he asked. "You wouldn't have to do anything. 32 people would be using my house. Their family and friends. They'd still need bathrooms, parking, trash bags, ice, extension cords, and somebody to make sure Uncle Dean doesn't put cigarette butts in my flower pots." Dad almost laughed. I heard it catch in his throat. Uncle Dean was 63 and treated every flower pot as a personal challenge. "That can all be handled," Dad said. "Then handle it somewhere else." Mom's voice came closer. "Ask her if she plans to reimburse us." Dad muttered something. I said, "Reimburse you for what?" "You heard her. The party was going to be at my house for free." "She means the invitations," he said. "They list your address. Then send an update." "That's embarrassing." I waited. Dad sighed. "I'm not saying you have to decide right now. I already did." Nora, please don't make permanent decisions over one bad dinner. You read a character indictment over a roast and called it one bad dinner. Mom said something else. Dad's voice changed. I have to go. Did you eat anything last night? The question escaped before I could stop it. His answer came softer. Cereal. Take your morning pill with actual food. I will, not just coffee, I know. We stayed on the line for another second, connected by the humiliating fact that I was still worried about his stomach while he was trying to negotiate access to my backyard. Goodbye, Dad. Call your mother. No. I ended the call. Paige had sent 3 more messages. You can't just pull the location 6 weeks before the party. Mom is devastated. If this is supposed to punish me, congratulations. I replied, nothing is canceled. I sent you every contact and deadline. She called immediately. I watched her name fill the screen. It was the first direct call she had made since the dinner, and for half a second, I felt relieved. Then I answered. What are we supposed to do with a spreadsheet? She demanded. Probably Reddit. Oh my God, good morning. You know I don't understand half this stuff. The columns have labels. That isn't what I mean. I opened my laptop and clicked the attachment, partly to keep my hands busy. The rental company needs a final chair count Wednesday. The caterer needs the next payment Friday. You'll need a new location before confirming either. You already paid the caterer. I paid the tasting fee and first deposit. The next payment is due Friday. From who? From whoever is planning the party. Her breathing changed. Not quite a gasp. More like the sound she made when a restaurant check arrived after she had assumed someone else was paying. You told Mom you were giving them this party. I was. So your gifts come with conditions. Yes. One of them is that you don't use the gift as evidence that I'm manipulative. That's not what the letter said. It said the party was about control. It said you use the party to control people. That doesn't mean you get to destroy it. Explain the difference. I don't have to debate every word with you. Did you write every word? There was a click on her end, possibly a pen against a countertop. I told you, Mom helped. Did you see the finished letter? Yes. Before she printed it? I don't remember. You don't remember whether you read 3 pages about me? I was upset. Did you know they were going to read it at dinner? I knew they wanted to talk to you. That wasn't my question. She went silent. Outside, the trash truck stopped at the house across the street. A mechanical arm lifted a green bin and shook it hard enough to make the lid flap. Paige said, I knew they might read some of it. Some. I didn't know Dad would do the whole thing. Did you plan to come? Mom thought it would be better if I didn't. That answer hurt in an embarrassingly clean way. Not because Paige had stayed away, because Mom had designed even her absence. Return my key by Wednesday, I said. Paige gave a short laugh. There it is. What? The punishment. It's my house key. I'm not going to break into your house, Nora. I didn't say you would. You're acting like I'm dangerous. I'm acting like you moved. I'll bring it when I get time. I'm changing the locks tomorrow. You already called somebody? Yes. See? This is what I mean. You go from 0 to nuclear. Changing a lock is not nuclear. Locksmiths would have much more interesting uniforms. She didn't laugh. Paige usually laughed when she was angry if a joke caught her off guard. This time there was only another silence, and beneath it I could hear a small kitchen appliance humming. I want my boxes, she said. They've been waiting for you. Don't touch them. They're in my mudroom. I'll get them this weekend. I leave Thursday. For how long? 4 days. Then next week. No, I'm putting them in storage before I go. You can't put my things somewhere without permission. You put them in my house without permission. I live there. You don't anymore. Wow. The word came out thin. Paige had a talent for making wow sound like a verdict from a disappointed jury. I softened despite myself. I'll pay through the end of the month. I'll send you the address and access information. Nothing will be outside. You've been waiting to do this. No. Yes, you have. You've been waiting for a reason to get rid of everything that reminds you I lived there. I looked toward the mudroom. From the kitchen, I could see the top of the floor lamp above the doorframe. That room reminded me every day, I said. Right. Because helping me was such a sacrifice. It was a sacrifice. You offered. You keep saying that like an offer can't cost anything. Her voice dropped. You always make sure I know the cost. I had no quick answer, which made me angrier than if she had insulted me. She had seen things about me. That was the problem. Buried inside all of Mom's polished language were pieces of truth Paige had collected while living 10 feet from my bedroom. I shouldn't have sighed at you, I said. What? When you bought the chair. I should have said what I thought instead of cleaning the counter like it had personally offended me. Paige was quiet. I shouldn't have made you guess, I continued. But that doesn't mean you get to keep my key or my house. You really think apologizing for a sigh makes you reasonable? No, I think it makes the sigh mine. The rest is still yours. She hung up. I sat staring at the task sheet until my 9 o'clock meeting reminder covered it. The rest of the morning passed in rectangles on a screen. I discussed deadlines, corrected a presentation, and nodded while a man in Denver explained a problem he had already explained in an email. At 11:30, the rental coordinator called. Hi, Nora, it's Jocelyn from Bright Day Events. I received a message from your sister asking us not to make any changes without her approval. That's fine. She also asked whether the canopy can be installed at a restaurant. It depends on the restaurant. A pause. She doesn't have one yet? Not yet. Jocelyn lowered her voice as if Paige might be under her desk. Are you still the contract holder? For the next 10 minutes, transferring the agreement required a form. Canceling would cost less than I expected, but more than I wanted to lose. I signed the transfer section, leaving the payment authorization blank for Paige to complete. By Tuesday afternoon, the locksmith was kneeling at my back door with a toolbox open beside him. He was an older man named Luis who hummed while he worked and called every screw buddy. This cylinder's worn, he said. You were due anyway. I appreciated the idea that the lock change was maintenance, not warfare. When he finished, he handed me 4 new keys on a silver ring. I tested the back door twice, then walked with him to the front. A car pulled into my driveway. Mom got out holding a foil-covered casserole in one hand and her old key to my house in the other. Mom stopped beside the hood of her car and looked from Luis to the new brass lock. Luis looked at me. I looked at the casserole. It was one of Mom's glass dishes, covered so tightly in foil that the edges had been folded into sharp little pleats. A square of masking tape on top said, "Chicken" in black marker, as if I might mistake it for roofing material. You changed the locks, she said. Luis began gathering his tools with the speed of a man who had encountered families before. Yes. Mom lifted the old key between 2 fingers. Without telling me. You don't live here. I have always had a key. And now you don't. Luis clicked his toolbox shut. All set, ma'am, he told me. Both doors, 4 keys. Call if either one sticks. Thank you. Mom watched me hand him my credit card. She stood completely still until he drove away, then came up the walkway carrying the casserole in front of her like an offering to an unreliable god. Was that necessary? She asked. Paige still has a key. Paige would never come in without asking. You just arrived holding yours. I brought you food. Were you going to knock? She glanced at the front door. It was the smallest possible movement. It answered everything. I knew you were working, she said. I was going to put this in the refrigerator and leave, which would be coming in without asking. I'm your mother. I know. The words came out flatter than I meant them to. Mom's face changed, but only for a moment. She recovered by lifting the casserole slightly. Are you going to make me stand outside? I'm deciding. Nora. I stepped aside. She walked past me without saying, thank you, headed straight for the kitchen, and set the casserole on the counter. Then she opened my refrigerator. There was already food in it. Half a roast, potatoes, carrots. 3 containers I had packed Sunday night after deciding that eating 1 cold vegetable over the sink did not constitute dinner. Mom stared at the containers. You took enough food for a week. I took the food I bought and cooked. Your father had cereal. He told me. And you're comfortable with that? Not especially, but he's a 68-year-old man with access to a refrigerator. He was upset. So was I. Mom closed the refrigerator harder than necessary. The bottles in the door rattled. I leaned against the opposite counter. Between us sat her chicken casserole and the 4 new keys Louise had left on their silver ring. "What's in that?" I asked. "Chicken." I saw the label. Chicken, rice, mushrooms. I don't like mushrooms. You used to. I have never liked mushrooms. She frowned at the casserole as though it had betrayed her. Your father said you did. Dad puts mushrooms on everything. He thinks tolerance is enthusiasm. For a second, her mouth twitched. I nearly smiled back. That was the dangerous thing about Mom. A whole childhood could rise inside one shared joke. She could be furious with me and still notice that my curtains needed hemming. She could make me feel known down to the smallest habit, then serve me a food I had disliked since I was old enough to push it to the edge of a plate. Her gaze moved to the new keys. May I have one? No. In case of an emergency. I have a neighbor. What neighbor? Gwen. Gwen travels. Not constantly. Does she have a key? Not yet. Mom gave a humorless laugh. So a woman who lives 3 houses away gets access, but your own mother doesn't. Gwen has never let herself into my house to reorganize my pantry. I did that once. You threw away unopened pasta because the boxes didn't match. They were different brands. They were both linguine. Mom crossed her arms. This is not about pasta. No, today it's about keys. Sunday, it was about my entire personality. She looked away. The late afternoon light through the glass doors fell across one side of her face. She looked tired. Not theatrically tired, not the hand-to-forehead version she used when Paige missed a reservation. There were gray shadows under her eyes, and the lipstick at one corner of her mouth had feathered into the fine lines above it. Your father barely slept, she said. Did you? That doesn't matter. It matters if you came here to discuss the letter. I came because you're leaving for Boston and there is food in your mudroom that will spoil. I followed her gaze. The boxes aren't food. There were crackers in one of them. Then the crackers are having a difficult transition. This is exactly what Paige means. The little jokes. Everything has to be a performance. Did Paige say that? Or did you? Mom's chin lifted. She was having trouble expressing herself. She seemed very expressive on the phone. She called you? I called her. She answered after I withdrew the venue. So you admit that was to get her attention. No, I'm pointing out that the terrified woman who couldn't sit at a dinner table found her voice when a payment was due. That's ugly. It's observable. Mom took a breath and smoothed both hands down the front of her cardigan. She had worn the green one with pearl buttons. I had fixed the loose bottom button the previous Sunday, while she complained that the thread manufacturers use now was inferior. Paige was distraught when she contacted me, Mom said. She sent message after message. Half of it contradicted the other half. She loves you. She is also deeply hurt by you. So you edited. I helped. You use things I told you privately. I use language that described the situation. You used a sentence from a conversation Paige never heard, because it was relevant. To whom? To both of you. I stared at her. Mom did not look embarrassed. That was the part I hadn't prepared for. I had expected denial, then reluctant admission. I had not expected her to stand in my kitchen and defend the right to redistribute my private words wherever she thought they would have the greatest effect. Did Paige know that sentence came from you? I asked. She agreed with it. Did you tell her where it came from? That wouldn't have changed whether it was true. It would have changed whose letter it was. Mom picked at the edge of the masking tape on the casserole. You should be grateful I helped her. I actually turned my head, as if there might be another daughter standing behind me who could make sense of that. Grateful? You didn't hear the original messages. Show me. No. Why not? Because they were sent to me in confidence. The hypocrisy was so complete it had its own weather system. I waited for her to hear it. She didn't. So Paige's confidence belongs to her, I said, but mine can be pasted into a letter and read over dinner. That is not the same. Tell me how. She was in crisis. She was mad about a key. She felt rejected by you. She moved out. You made her feel discarded the second she no longer needed a bed. I asked her to collect her belongings. You gave her a deadline before your trip, because I don't want her boxes sitting in my house while I'm gone. Mom glanced toward the mudroom again. Where are you putting them? Storage. Her eyes widened. Nora. It's dry, secure, and paid through the end of the month. That is so punitive. What would be non-punitive? Keeping them forever? Giving your sister time. She has had a month. She's still settling in. Then she can settle with her own lamp. Mom pressed her lips together. Her attention returned to the keys. You've wanted to do this for a while, she said. Paige had said almost the same thing. Maybe they were right. Maybe I had stood in the guest room doorway every morning, looking at the empty bracket and the inside-out sheet, wanting the last evidence of Paige's stay gone, wanting my house to stop holding her place open when she had left without facing me. I wanted her to finish moving, I said. Those are not the same thing. No, they aren't. She seemed disappointed that I agreed. My laptop chimed from the dining table. Another work message. I looked at the clock. I have a call in 5 minutes. Of course you do. What does that mean? It means there is always something more urgent than your family when the conversation becomes uncomfortable. You came without asking during my workday. I came to make peace. With mushrooms? With food? With an attempt? Did you come to apologize? Her face closed. I came to ask you to reconsider the party. There it was. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because she had managed to make the journey from my childhood, through Paige's pain, across the sacred bond of confidential communication, and right back to my backyard. No, your father is devastated. Dad wants the party? He wants me to have the evening we planned. What do you want? I want my daughters to behave like sisters. That isn't an answer. I want you to stop punishing the entire family because someone finally told you the truth. I picked up the casserole and handed it back to her. Mom didn't take it at first. I brought that for you. I don't like mushrooms. This is childish. It's factual. She took the dish. The foil made a dry crunch beneath her fingers. At the front door, she paused and looked down at the key she still held. The old brass had gone dull around the teeth from years of use. Do you want this back? She asked. No. She set it on the narrow table by the door anyway. Then she left carrying the casserole. I watched her car disappear before picking up the old key. I put it in the kitchen junk drawer beside expired coupons, loose batteries, and 3 pens that didn't work. The storage facility had 1 unit small enough for Paige's boxes and tall enough for the floor lamp. I reserved it online, loaded my car in 2 trips, and photographed each item before setting it inside. I didn't open anything. I didn't throw away the crackers. The unit smelled like concrete dust and somebody's dryer sheets. Its orange metal door rolled down with a hollow clatter. I sent Paige the address, unit number, gate code, and payment deadline. Her response arrived before I left the parking lot. Mom said you changed the locks on her. I typed, I changed the locks on my house. That night, Paige created a group message called Anniversary Rescue. She added me, Mom, Dad, and 6 relatives whose numbers I barely recognized. Her first message said, "We're moving forward despite unexpected changes." Mom added a broken heart emoji. Dad wrote, "Let's all stay calm." I left the group. 10 seconds later, Dad added me back. I stared at my name reappearing at the bottom of the screen. Dad wrote, "Please don't leave. This is how we communicate." I replied, "You have my email." Paige answered, "Not everything is a spreadsheet, Nora." A number I didn't recognize wrote, "Is this about the canopy?" Another number replied, "Who is this?" Uncle Dean wrote, "Dean." The first number answered, "This is Linda. I have had the same number for 9 years." Uncle Dean sent a thumbs up. Paige attempted to restore order by announcing that the anniversary would happen on the original date and that she was exploring several exciting alternative venues. Mom added that the important thing was celebrating love despite adversity. I had become adversity. Aunt Linda suggested the private room at a seafood restaurant near the highway. Mom said the carpet smelled damp. Uncle Dean offered the lodge where his bowling league held its banquet. Paige said they were looking for something with natural light. Dean sent a photograph of a window. I muted the group and went upstairs to pack. My suitcase was still on the top shelf of the closet behind an extra blanket Paige had shoved there. When I pulled it down, the blanket came with it and wrapped around my head. I stood in the dark wool for a few seconds longer than necessary. The trip to Boston was supposed to be 4 days of meetings I had complained about for a month. Now the thought of a hotel room where nobody had a key felt almost luxurious. I packed 2 pairs of black pants, 3 blouses, running shoes I would not use, and a sweater Mom had given me the previous Christmas. I took the sweater out. Then I put it back because it was warm and my mother did not own the color blue. My phone rang from the bed. Dad. Did the group message catch fire? I asked. What? Nothing. What do you need? Do you know where the large pill organizer is? The one with morning and evening compartments? Yes. Bathroom cabinet, second shelf, behind the rolled washcloths. I looked there. Did you move the washcloths? A pause. Then I heard a drawer open. Elaine, he called. Did you move the blue washcloths? Mom answered from somewhere farther away. Why would I move washcloths? Dad came back to the phone. They're not there. Check the hall closet. You said the bathroom. I'm trying to guess where Mom relocated them. I did not relocate anything, Mom called. I sat on the edge of the bed. Why do you need the large one? You have the weekly case. One of the lids cracked. When? A few days ago. Which lid? Thursday evening. So you've been putting Thursday evening pills loose in the drawer? I know which ones they are. Dad. It's fine. The automatic answer formed in my mouth. I'll order another one. I could have done it in 30 seconds. I knew the exact model, the pharmacy website, and the password Mom always forgot because she had added an exclamation point and then denied adding it. Instead, I said, "The pharmacy sells them. I'm aware." Okay? Dad was quiet. I could feel him waiting for the rest, the confirmation number, the delivery date, the small sentence that meant the problem had transferred from his hands to mine. What time is your flight? He asked. 10:15. You should leave early. I will. Traffic near the airport. I know. Another silence. You're really putting Paige's belongings in a storage unit? They're already there. Your mother said you hired movers. I made 2 trips in my car. She said there was a truck. The storage place has trucks. I didn't use one. Huh. That single sound carried a faint, weary recognition. Mom had turned 4 boxes and a lamp into an eviction convoy, and Dad had repeated it before checking. Did you see the original messages Paige sent Mom? I asked. No. Did you ask? I don't want to get in the middle. You read the letter aloud. I know. His voice had lost its defensive edge. For a moment, I thought he might apologize. Instead, he said, Your mother thought hearing it from me would keep things calm. I looked at the packed suitcase. Did it? No. It was not an apology, but it was the first honest answer he had given me. When I checked the group message at the airport, there were 73 new texts. The seafood restaurant had been rejected because Mom remembered a bad scallop from 2009. The lodge had been rejected because Paige disliked the ceiling tiles. Aunt Linda had suggested a hotel ballroom, then withdrawn the suggestion after seeing the minimum charge. Uncle Dean had posted 3 additional window photographs and a message that said, "Lots of light at 4 p.m." Mom had asked why a 45th anniversary was being treated like an office luncheon. Paige had written, "I'm doing my best." Mom replied, "Nobody said you weren't, sweetheart. I read that twice." If I had written, "I'm doing my best," Mom would have told me nobody asked for perfection and advised me to loosen my grip. Paige received reassurance. I received character development. A private message from Paige arrived while I waited to board. Did you include the florist's information? It's in the vendor file. I don't see it. Page 2. The florist says there's no order under our name. There isn't an order. You picked screenshots. No one approved a quote. 3 dots appeared. I thought you handled it. I typed. I asked you twice which arrangement you wanted. You know flowers better than I do. I know which ones require water. She sent me a middle finger emoji. I almost sent one back. Instead, I put my phone away when boarding began. For 2 hours in the air, nobody could reach me. I drank tomato juice, watched clouds flatten into a white sheet below the wing, and tried to read a report without absorbing a sentence. The woman beside me slept with her mouth open and her headphones playing loud enough that I could identify a song from the 80s. It was the most peaceful conversation I'd had all week. My hotel room overlooked the brick wall of another hotel. The curtains closed all the way without leaving a gap. The shower pressure was aggressive, and there were no cardboard boxes in the mudroom. I changed for dinner with 2 colleagues. Halfway through a bowl of chowder, my phone began buzzing against the table. Maya glanced at it. Emergency? My sister is planning a party. Those are often indistinguishable. I turned the phone face down. Maya was in her 50s, wore bright red glasses, and had the unnerving habit of asking a question only once. She didn't tilt her head or encourage. She simply waited to see whether you wanted to answer. My parents' anniversary, I said. I was planning it. Now I'm not. Congratulations or condolences? I don't know yet. Then don't answer until dessert. I didn't. When the check came, there were 5 missed calls from Paige and 1 message marked with enough punctuation to qualify as weather. Call me. The caterer is saying the quote changes if we switch locations? I called from the hotel lobby. Paige answered with, "Did you know about this?" About what? The caterer charges more if they have to use a venue without a kitchen. Yes. And you didn't tell me. It's on page 3 under site requirements. Stop saying page numbers like that helps. It helps if you read the pages. I am reading them. There are too many. A brass luggage cart squeaked across the lobby behind me. I moved toward a row of empty chairs beside a fake fireplace. What happened? I asked. We looked at a place tonight. Which place? The garden room at Bellini's. Mom hates Bellini's. She likes their bread. She says their red sauce tastes anxious. I don't know what that means. Neither does the sauce. Paige made a sound that might have been a laugh, then covered it with a cough. The room was okay, she said. Mom said the chairs looked like they belonged at a conference. Dad said he didn't care about the chairs. Then Mom asked him why he never cared about details until the details were wrong. The manager stood there the entire time. I'm sorry I missed that. You're enjoying this. I'm enjoying the manager part. You want me to fail? The accusation came quickly, but there was less certainty behind it than before. I sat in one of the lobby chairs. I want you to understand that the party didn't arrange itself. I never said it did. You said I was controlling it. That wasn't about the work. How do I do the work without making decisions? You ask people. I did. You sent me 400 candle photographs. There weren't 400. 386, you counted? The board counted. Paige exhaled. Mom wrote the anniversary part. I stopped watching the luggage cart. What? I didn't say you were using the party to control everyone. Did you approve that paragraph? She read it to me. That's not what I asked. I said it sounded right at the time. Why? Because I was mad at you. At me, or at the key. At how you asked for it. I texted, please return my key before Thursday. After barely speaking to me for 2 weeks. You moved out while I was at work. I told you I was moving that week. You didn't tell me you were taking the television. Oh my God, buy another television. It isn't about the television. That's what Dad said. Congratulations. You found common ground. She was silent long enough that I checked the screen to see if the call had dropped. Then she said, I told Mom you made me feel like I had to earn every day I stayed with you. I said you kept score even when you pretended not to. I said being around you made me feel incompetent. Those sentences sounded like her. They were less elegant than the letter and more painful. Okay, I said. Okay, I heard you. That's all? What do you want me to say? I don't know. Defend yourself. I probably made you feel incompetent sometimes. She sounded suspicious. You admit that? I admit I knew how I wanted things done and didn't always say it until you did them differently. You corrected how I loaded the dishwasher. You put wine glasses on the bottom rack. There. That tone. I closed my eyes. Fine, I said. I'm sorry about the tone. You can't apologize and sound irritated. I'm irritated and sorry. Adults can hold two things. She breathed out, quieter this time. The letter wasn't supposed to be all Mom, she said, but it was, not all of it. Send me what you originally told her. No? Why? Because it was private. I looked across the lobby at my reflection in the dark window. You both keep saying that word, I said, like I'm the only person it protects. Paige didn't answer. In the background on her end, Mom said, ask her about the deposit. Paige covered the phone too late. I stood. You're with Mom? We were looking at venues. Of course. Wait, the caterer said you might lose part of the deposit if we don't confirm by Friday. I know. Are you really willing to lose it? Yes. It's your money. Yes. Mom's voice came again, sharper now. Tell her throwing away money doesn't make her a martyr. Paige went quiet. I waited for her to repeat it. Instead, she said, Mom, stop. The words were soft, almost embarrassed, but they were hers. There was a pause on the other end. Mom said, I'm trying to help you. I know, Paige replied. Just stop for a second. I could picture them in the parking lot outside Bellini's, Mom in the passenger seat because Paige's car had better cup holders, the phone balanced between them. Mom would have her purse in her lap and the restaurant brochure folded into quarters. Paige would be gripping the steering wheel even though the car wasn't moving. Mom's voice came closer. We are losing money because your sister wants to make a point. I heard you. Then tell her I'm talking to her. Mom said my name, addressing me through the phone without having to speak to me directly. I almost hung up. Paige said, Give me a minute, Mom. A car door opened, followed by the hollow slam of it closing. Traffic noise replaced the muffled quiet. Where are you? I asked, standing behind the restaurant. Classy. There's a dumpster. More natural light than the lodge? She laughed once before catching herself. It was the first time we had laughed together since she moved out. The sound left an ache behind it. I'm not asking you to fix the caterer, she said. You called 5 times, because nobody would tell me what the extra charge was for. They told you, no kitchen. I know that now. Then what do you need? I don't know. I waited. Paige hated silence. She filled it the way some people covered mirrors during storms. Mom is making this impossible, she said at last. Every place is wrong. Bellini's is too dark. The lodge is too ugly. Aunt Linda's seafood place smells like carpet. The carpet smells damp. Whatever. Dad says we should just pick one, and then she says he doesn't care about their marriage. That sounds right. How did you deal with her? I told her I'd handle it. No, I mean, when she rejected things. I found more things. Paige groaned. That's insane. Yes. Why didn't you just tell her no? I looked around the hotel lobby. A man in a suit was trying to steer 2 rolling bags while carrying a pizza box flat against his chest. Because she would get upset, I said. She's upset anyway. Yes. The simplicity of it irritated me. I had spent years doing extra work to prevent a result that arrived regardless. Paige said, I thought you liked planning. I like plans. That's different. Mom said you volunteered because you need to be in charge. Mom asked me in front of Dad, then said she couldn't imagine trusting anybody else with such an important night. Paige was quiet. What did she tell you? I asked. That you had already decided to do it. Before I knew there was an it? She said you'd been talking about your backyard for months. I talked about replacing the fence. Another silence. Mom had taken my complaint about rotting fence boards and turned it into an event proposal. It was almost elegant. Paige, When did you see the final letter? Sunday. What time? I don't know. Around 2. After I'd started cooking. I didn't know what you were cooking. That isn't the point. She sent it as a file. I read it on my phone. All of it? Yes. Did you tell her to read it at dinner? I told her she could use it to talk to you. Use it how? I don't know. I thought she would tell you how I felt, in her own words. I didn't think about that. You didn't think about much. The instant I said it, I wanted it back. Paige's breathing went shallow. There, she said. That. I know. You always do that. I know. Then why do you keep doing it? Because sometimes you don't think about much, Paige. She gave a bitter laugh. Great apology. It wasn't an apology. It was the reason. You cannot stand admitting I might have a point. You have several points. You also handed them to Mom and let her sharpen them. The restaurant door opened somewhere near her. I heard voices, and the metallic bang of something dropped into the dumpster. Are you going to send the original messages? I asked. No. Because they were worse? Because they were mine. So was the letter yours? She didn't answer. Mom called her name from across the parking lot. I have to go, Paige said. Of course, I said I would handle the party, then handle it. That doesn't mean I'm taking your side. I didn't ask you to. I'm serious. So am I. She ended the call. Upstairs, I found that hotel housekeeping had folded the corner of my toilet paper into a tiny triangle. The room was spotless, impersonal, and untouched by anyone who loved me. I slept 8 hours without waking. Aunt Linda texted during breakfast. Your mother says you canceled the anniversary. I'm not getting involved, but do I need to change my flight? I wrote. The date is unchanged. I withdrew my house as the venue and sent them all vendor information. Please ask Paige about arrangements. Linda answered. Understood. Then, a minute later, your mother said invitations already went out. They did, with your address. Yes. Is this about the letter? I stared at the question. Aunt Linda knew about it. Of course she did. Mom considered confidentiality a one-way door. I typed, were you told what was in it? Oh, only that Paige finally stood up for herself and you left with the meat. I had to set down my coffee. The meat? Her words, not mine. I replied, I'll send the airline money if the date changes. Linda wrote, I can buy my own airline ticket. I was asking whether I should pack shoes for grass. A laugh escaped me in the hotel dining room. I told her to pack shoes for a restaurant. She sent a picture of silver heels and changed the subject. Work filled most of the next 2 days. I sat through presentations, ate food from rectangular trays, and watched people argue about timelines with none of the participants related to me. It was restful in a way I had never appreciated. On Saturday evening, Dad called while I was walking back from dinner. We bought a pill organizer, he said. Congratulations, it has removable compartments. Living in the future. He chuckled. Then his voice turned careful. Your mother is making pot roast tomorrow. I waited. It's Sunday, he added. I'm in Boston, I know. I meant you could call. During dinner, if you wanted. Why? To talk. About what? Anything. A cold wind pushed between the buildings. I tightened my coat. Would the letter be on the table? I asked. No. Would Mom expect an apology? Dad took too long. I don't think anybody should expect anything, he said. That's not the same as no. She feels you haven't acknowledged Paige's pain. I spoke to Paige. You did? More than once. He sounded surprised, which told me Mom hadn't known about the second call. What did Paige say? He asked. That's between us. Dad went quiet. I hadn't intended the sentence as punishment, but I heard the lesson inside it anyway. I see, he said. Do you? I suppose I earned that. We walked together in silence from different cities. At the corner, I stopped beneath a pharmacy sign glowing red against the sidewalk. Dad, why did you agree to read it? He sighed. Your mother said if she did it, you would dismiss the whole thing as coming from her. She was right. Yes. The answer surprised me. Did you recognize her phrases? I've heard your mother speak for 46 years. Of course, I recognized some of them. Then why? Because Paige approved it. Because Elaine said something had to change. Because I thought if we got through the ugly part, you would all start talking. We were already talking. Mom just carried the words between us. Dad breathed into the phone. I didn't understand that, he said. It was closer to an apology than anything he had offered, and still carefully shaped so that misunderstanding, not choice, was responsible. Will you come next Sunday? He asked. I don't know. Your mother misses you. She came to my house Tuesday. That isn't the same. No, I said. She wanted the venue Tuesday. Dad did not defend her. On Sunday afternoon, Paige called from the storage facility. The gate code doesn't work. It worked when I was there. It says invalid. Are you entering the pound sign? There's no pound sign in your text. It's on the sign beside the keypad. Oh. I heard buttons beep. The gate mechanism rumbled. I'm in, she said. Good. Which building? C. The map is attached to the email. I'm driving. Just tell me. Second row, left side. She stayed on the phone as she found the unit. I heard the orange door roll up. You put everything on a tarp, she said. The concrete was dusty. Did you open the boxes? No, Mom said you went through them. I photographed the outside of each one. She said you probably threw away the food. The crackers are in the box. A cardboard flap shifted. You really left the crackers. I told you I did. They're stale. They've been in a moving box for a month. She made a sound halfway between a sigh and a laugh. The towel around the frames is yours, she said. I know. I'll wash it. Okay. Don't say it like that. Like what? Like you don't believe me? I leaned against the hotel desk. I said, okay. Yes, but there was a gap first. I am not responsible for gaps anymore. Paige went quiet. Then she said, Mom told me you wanted me gone by Christmas. What? She said you called her after I missed that condo showing and said you couldn't take it anymore. I said I couldn't keep rearranging my schedule for appointments you skipped. She said you were done having me in your house. I never said that. The unit echoed as Paige moved something heavy. Did you tell her I was going to ask you to leave? I asked. No. She told me not to panic because she would talk you down. I closed my eyes. That explained 2 weeks in January when Paige had been strangely helpful, unloading the dishwasher before I woke and asking every night whether I needed anything from the store. I had thought she was recovering. She never talked me down, I said. So you didn't want me out? I wanted you to follow through. That's not the same thing. Paige's voice softened. It felt the same. Maybe because Mom told you it was. A long silence settled between us. Then Paige said, What else did she tell you? I said, I sat down at the hotel desk, that you believed I let you stay with me so I could feel superior. I said you liked being the person who had it together. That isn't the same thing. No. That every meal came with an expectation. I said you got quiet when I didn't eat with you. You told me to cook without counting on you, then got upset when there weren't leftovers. I know. That my house never felt like your home. It didn't. I paused. Paige moved a box across the storage floor. Cardboard dragged over the tarp. Okay, I said. That part is yours. Mostly. What does mostly mean? Mom changed it from felt like my home to was my home. I told her that wasn't what I meant. The letter had said, You made it clear that your house was yours, never ours, even after promising me a home for as long as I needed one. The word ours had bothered me when Dad read it. I had thought it meant Paige expected part of my house to belong to her. Now I wondered if it belonged to Mom. What else? Paige asked. She said you believed I was angry because Mom and Dad helped you with the condo. Paige stopped moving things. She told me you were. I told her I was worried they were spending money Dad might need for his knee. She said you called it another bailout. I called it help. You call everything help in that voice. What voice? That voice. I'm in another state. You can't even see my face. I don't need to. I leaned back in the chair. Did I resent being asked to help you compare mortgage documents after they gave you money without talking to me about it? Yes. Did I resent you getting the condo? No. I wanted you to get it. You didn't act happy. You moved out while I was at work. Because Mom said if I made it a big emotional goodbye, you'd use it to make me stay longer. I closed my eyes. That doesn't even make sense. It did at the time. Did you want to stay longer? No. Then how could I make you? I don't know, Nora. You get disappointed and the whole room feels like somebody failed a test. The comment hurt because it fit too neatly beside the paragraph about my silence. Mom told me you needed a clean exit, I said. What does that mean? She said you wanted to avoid a conversation because you knew I would turn your new start into a discussion about everything I had done for you. Paige swore softly. So you told Mom you were moving Tuesday, I continued, and she told me not to interfere because you needed to do one thing independently. She told you, she said if I offered to help, it would make you feel incompetent. I waited all week for you to ask if I needed boxes. I had boxes. I know you had boxes. They were in the garage. I stayed out of your way because I was told that was what you wanted, and I left because she told me that was what you wanted. We were quiet. Somewhere in the storage building, a metal door slammed. The echo rolled through Paige's phone. She does this because she hates conflict, Paige said. I looked at the blank hotel wall. No, I said. She creates conflict. She hates being left out of it. That's not fair. You asked. She thinks she's helping. She thought reading that letter was helping. You think everything she does is calculated, and you think nothing she does is. Paige gave a tired sigh. We can't even agree about this. We don't have to. Then what are we doing? Comparing what was actually said. And then what? I don't know. It was uncomfortable admitting that. I usually had an answer ready because unanswered questions were invitations for someone else to make a mess. Paige opened another box. I didn't say you only help people to feel superior, she said. I said sometimes you make it hard to accept help from you. That is different. I did say you keep score. I do. You admit it? I remember things. You remember them out loud. When someone asks me for the same favor a fifth time, yes. You could say no the first time. You could stop asking. That's not how people work. It's how calendars work. She laughed despite herself. You're impossible. You wrote a letter about it. Mom wrote a letter about it. You approved it. I know. The words came out low and immediate. No defense attached. I didn't know what to do with them. Paige broke the silence by saying, The lamp won't fit in my car. Take the shade off. There's no shade. Right. Why do I own a lamp with no shade? You said the exposed bulb looked industrial. It looks unfinished. Those are cousins. She laughed again, a real laugh this time, and the sound pulled up a memory of us assembling a bookshelf in my first apartment. We had put one shelf in backward and decided to call it decorative. Paige had been 23, wearing one of my shirts without permission. I had been annoyed with her for 3 separate reasons and happy she was there. What about the television? I asked. Her laughter stopped. What about it? You took it. I know. Why? I thought it was mine. You knew it wasn't. Fine. I was mad. Thank you. That wasn't an apology. It was the first answer. She made another irritated sound. Then she said, The screen got scratched in the move. How badly? It works. There's just a line when the picture is dark. That's why you haven't mentioned it. I'm getting it fixed. With what money? See? What? You ask a question that sounds practical, but there's a judgment hiding inside it. There is a judgment standing in the middle of that question waving. I have money. You called me about the catering deposit yesterday. That is party money, which is money. I'll fix the television. Okay, and I'll bring your key. The locks are already changed. I know. I still have it. Then bring it. I said I would. She sounded younger when she was embarrassed, though she was 35 and standing in a storage unit she had entered with her own gate code, loading her own property into her own car. Mom's version of Paige as permanently fragile was easier to reject from a distance. On the phone, I could hear the places where I had helped build it. Do you need another trip for the lamp? I asked. I can put the seat down. Don't drive with it sticking out the window. I know how cars work. You left shrimp in a refrigerator with no power. That was one time. It was enough shrimp for several times. She hung up laughing. A few minutes later, she texted a photograph of the empty unit. The tarp was folded into a square against the wall. "All gone," she wrote. I replied with instructions for closing the rental before the next billing date. She answered, "Already asked the office." It was a tiny thing, but I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. My flight home landed Monday afternoon. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the work trip felt like something I had watched rather than taken. The blue chalk lines were still on the patio. One of the sample lights had fallen completely and lay across the step. Inside, the house smelled closed up. I set my suitcase in the hallway and walked through each room, turning on lamps. The mudroom looked larger without Paige's boxes. The rectangular clean spots on the floor made the surrounding tile seem dirtier. On the kitchen counter sat Mom's old key, where I had left it after moving it out of the junk drawer. I couldn't remember taking it back out. Maybe I had done it while packing. Maybe Mom had been right about one thing. I could turn any ordinary object into evidence if I stared long enough. My phone chimed. Paige had sent a photograph of a restaurant room. Beige walls, dark wooden chairs, cream tablecloths. A stone fireplace occupied one end, and narrow windows looked onto a parking lot. "What do you think?" she asked. I typed, "About what?" "The room. You said I control things. I'm asking your opinion, not giving you control." I zoomed in on the photograph. The chairs were sturdy, the tables already included, and the carpet appeared dry. How many people does it hold? 40 seated. Private bathrooms. Dad wouldn't need stairs. That last detail slowed me. Where is it? Marlowe's. Mom hated their coffee but liked their roast chicken. More importantly, the private room had a separate entrance and enough parking. I wrote, "It looks practical." Practical is not a compliment, it is from me. She sent a second photograph showing the fireplace lit. Mom says it feels like a retirement party. Tell her retirement parties don't own beige. That earned a laughing emoji. Then Paige wrote, "Can you answer one caterer question without taking it back over? Ask, if Marlowe's includes food, do I cancel your caterer or transfer them somewhere else? Cancel. You'll lose the first deposit. The transfer was waiting for your signature, so don't sign it. Ask Marlowe's whether dessert is included before you cancel." Why? Mom ordered the anniversary cake through the caterer. 3 dots appeared. Of course she did. I could have warned her about the cake earlier. It was in the file, but I knew how easy it was to miss. The old version of me would have called both businesses, compared cancellation fees, and sent Paige a recommendation before she finished typing. Instead, I wrote, "Their cancellation number is on page 3. She replied, "I walked into that. Yes." I unpacked, started laundry, and reheated a slice of roast for dinner. Halfway through, Dad called. "Paige found a restaurant," he said. "She showed me." "She did?" "Yes." He seemed to consider that. "Your mother says it's too ordinary. It's an anniversary dinner, not a coronation." I said something similar. "You used the word coronation." I said royal wedding. "Close." He laughed. Then the quiet returned. "Would you come Sunday?" he asked. I looked across the table at the empty chair. "Will Mom bring out the letter?" "No." "Will she expect me to apologize?" I told her there would be no demands. That isn't what I asked. Dad exhaled. "She expects it." I told her not to ask. "And Paige?" I invited her. "Did she say yes?" "She said she would if you did." That sounded less like fear than a test. "I'll come," I said. "But if anyone reads anything about me, I'm taking dessert." Dad laughed. "No one is reading anything. Put that in writing. That sounds dangerous in this family." It was the closest we had come to admitting the absurdity together, and I let him have it. Sunday came with 3 calls from Mom, none of which I answered. The first voicemail asked whether I was still coming. The second said she had made too many potatoes based on Dad's assurance that I was coming. The third said there was no need to bring anything because Paige had ordered dessert. I stopped at a bakery anyway. Not because I wanted control over dessert, because Paige liked lemon pie and usually ordered chocolate when she was anxious about pleasing Mom. The bakery only had lemon tarts. I bought 6. Mom opened the door before I rang the bell. "You're late." I checked my phone. It's 5:58. I said 5:30. Dad said 6. She looked over her shoulder. Robert. From the living room, Dad called, I may have said 6. Mom stepped aside. She was wearing a navy blouse with a scarf tied close around her neck. Her lipstick was fresh, and the table behind her had been set with the white plates she used for holidays and confrontations. You brought dessert, she said. I brought lemon tarts. Paige ordered a cake. Then we can eat both. She was trying to contribute. So am I. Mom took the bakery box but held it away from herself, as if it had leaked. Paige was standing near the fireplace with a glass of wine. She wore dark jeans and a rust-colored sweater I had once told her made her look like a decorative pillow. At the time, she had laughed. Now we both remembered it at once. Hi, she said. Hi, you cut your hair. No, I brushed it. Dad laughed from his chair. Mom did not. Paige lifted her glass slightly. Marlowe's is booked, I heard. We paid the deposit. Good. Mom still hates the carpet. I don't hate it, Mom said, carrying the tart box toward the kitchen. I said the pattern is busy. It's brown, Paige called after her. It has burgundy in it. Paige looked at me. It does not have burgundy. Dangerous conversation, I said. I'm staying neutral. Her mouth twitched. Mom returned without the tart box. Nora, would you make the dressing? Everything is on the counter. I almost said yes automatically. The kitchen was 10 feet away. Making dressing required olive oil, vinegar, mustard, salt, and the ability to shake a jar. Refusing would look petty. Agreeing would feel like slipping my arms back into a coat I had just realized didn't fit. Where's the recipe? I asked. You know how I like it. I know how I like it. Mom's expression tightened. It isn't complicated. Then Paige can make it. Paige nearly inhaled her wine. Why me? She asked. Because Mom said it isn't complicated. I ordered dessert. We know, Mom said quickly. Nora, please. Your father shouldn't have too much bottled dressing. Dad looked up from the television. I've survived ranch. No one said anything about ranch, Mom replied. I walked into the kitchen, found a clean jar, and made the dressing. It was not a defeat. It was salad dressing. I had to keep reminding myself that a boundary was not a religious vow against mustard. Paige joined me while I was measuring vinegar. Too much, she said. You make it. I'm just observing. There's a whole letter about that. She leaned against the counter. Are we going to do this all night? I don't know. Are you going to tell me every thought is a letter now? That didn't even make sense. I'm making dressing under pressure. She laughed, then covered it by opening the refrigerator. Inside, the cake box occupied the entire middle shelf. What kind did you get? I asked. Chocolate, of course. I panicked. I brought lemon, I know. She took out the salad bowl. Thank you. The words were quiet enough that Mom couldn't hear them from the dining room. I screwed the lid onto the jar. Did you bring my key? Paige's shoulders dropped. It's in my other purse. You have 12 purses. 9. Bring it next time. The locks are changed. That doesn't make the key yours. I said I'd bring it. I shook the dressing hard enough to turn it cloudy. Paige watched me. You don't believe me, she said. I believe you intend to. That's worse. It's more accurate. Before she could answer, Mom entered carrying a platter. What are you two whispering about? Salad, Paige said. Mom looked at the jar in my hand. That seems like a serious salad. Dinner began with Dad saying, Grace. We did not normally say grace unless Aunt Linda was visiting or Mom wanted the meal to feel important. Dad thanked God for food, health, 45 years of marriage, and the opportunity for family to come together in understanding. Mom said, Amen firmly. Paige opened one eye and looked at me. I concentrated on the potatoes. For the first 10 minutes, conversation remained safe. Dad complained about a commentator on television. Paige described the private entrance at Marlowe's. Mom explained that the restaurant's coffee had improved since they changed management, which allowed her to accept the venue without admitting she had changed her mind. Then she praised Paige for handling the arrangements. You've done so much in only a few days, Mom said. I knew you could if someone gave you the chance. Paige stopped cutting her roast chicken. I drank water. Mom continued. Sometimes people need room to discover what they're capable of. Mom, Paige said. What? I'm complimenting you. It sounded like a comparison. I didn't mention anyone else. You didn't have to. Mom looked wounded. I am allowed to be proud of you without it being about Nora. That's true, I said. Paige glanced at me. Mom turned toward me. Thank you. I meant Paige is right. It sounded like a comparison. Dad set down his fork. Mom folded her napkin once. I had hoped we could get through a meal without analyzing every sentence. I looked at the white plate, the carefully placed fork, the empty space where a duplicate letter had been the previous Sunday I attended. That would be new, I said. Nora, Dad warned. No, Mom said. Letter. I'm eating. You're sitting there waiting for an opportunity to punish me. I made your dressing. This is not about dressing. Nothing ever is. Paige put down her fork. Can we not do this? Mom's attention shifted to her. Sweetheart, I am trying not to. There it was again. The instant protection, the soft voice. Paige heard it too. Don't sweetheart me, she said. Mom blinked. Excuse me? You do that when you want me to stop talking. I call you sweetheart because you are my daughter. You don't call Nora sweetheart. She doesn't like it. I've never been asked, I said. Mom turned to me. You have always hated pet names. Which ones? This is ridiculous. Elaine, Dad said quietly. She looked at him. What? Just eat. Mom stared at him for a moment, then picked up her fork. Her hand shook slightly as she cut a potato. Guilt moved through me, immediate and familiar. I could have changed the subject. I could have asked about the restaurant coffee or Uncle Dean's windows. I had always been able to lower the temperature because I knew where Mom kept the thermostat. Paige spoke before I could. Did you tell Nora I wanted her out of the way when I moved? Mom's fork stopped. Dad looked up. What? Paige, Mom said, this isn't the time. When is the time? We are trying to have a peaceful dinner. You said I needed a clean exit because Nora would make my move about herself. Mom's eyes flicked toward me. And you told me Nora wanted me gone by Christmas, Paige continued. I said she was overwhelmed. You said she had called you and told you she couldn't take it anymore. She did. I said I couldn't keep rearranging work for appointments Paige skipped. I said, you were furious. Yes. Mom spread her hands. What was I supposed to tell her? That her sister was furious with her while she was trying to rebuild her life? The truth? Paige asked. I was protecting you. From what? From another confrontation. Dad frowned. I didn't know any of this. Mom turned on him. Because you didn't have to handle it. I was living in the same house. You were recovering. My knee hurt, Elaine. I wasn't unconscious. Paige looked down at her plate. Mom pushed her chair back an inch. So this is what you two have been doing. Comparing notes and putting everything I've said on trial. We had one phone call, Paige said. You called me from storage afterward and acted like you barely spoke. I said we talked. You said nothing important was resolved. Nothing was. Mom looked at me. You've been using this situation to turn her against me. I felt the old urge to defend myself with dates, exact wording, screenshots. Before I could speak, Paige did. She didn't turn me against you. Mom's voice softened. You don't see what she's doing. Then explain it. She withdrew the party. She changed her locks. She moved your belongings. Now she is rewarding you with approval because you're repeating her version. I don't have her approval. You don't need it. Then why does everyone keep telling me I'm desperate for it? Mom stared at her. Dad cleared his throat. The letter should not have been read at dinner. The room went completely quiet. Mom turned slowly. What did you say? I said we handled it badly. We? Yes, we. You agreed that Nora needed to hear it. I did. And now, because she removed her house and embarrassed us, you're apologizing. I'm not apologizing because I'm embarrassed. You haven't apologized at all, I said. Dad looked at me. That's true, he said. Mom let out a sharp breath and stood. I am not going to sit here while everyone rewrites what happened. Paige stood too. You rewrote what happened before it happened. That letter was based on your words, some of my words. You approved it. Paige's face flushed. I know. The admission dropped between us. She looked at me rather than Mom. I shouldn't have let them read it, she said. No, I thought if I was here, you'd talk over me. You should have said that to me. I was angry. So was I. I know. It wasn't a full apology. It didn't repair the empty chair or Dad's reading voice or the warm paper beside my plate. But Paige had said it in the room where she had once been absent, with Mom standing beside her, unable to translate. Mom picked up her plate. Food is getting cold, Dad said helplessly. It's already cold. She carried it into the kitchen. A cabinet closed hard, then another. Dad rubbed both hands over his face. Paige sat down. I reached for a lemon tart from the bakery box Mom had finally placed on the sideboard. You ordered cake, she said. I'm aware. She took a tart too. Dad looked toward the kitchen, then at us. He hesitated before taking the third. We ate in silence while Mom moved dishes loudly beyond the doorway. When I left, Paige followed me onto the porch. The air smelled like wet pavement. She wrapped her arms around herself. I didn't tell her everything we talked about, she said, but you called her. She called me. I was upset after storage. And then she used it. I know. I opened my car door. Paige touched the top edge before I could get in. I'll send you the messages, she said. All of them. Her face tightened. All of them, I repeated. Not a cleaner version. She looked through the front window at Mom standing behind the dining room curtain. Then she nodded. She sent the first message at 11:14 that night. It was an audio file 43 seconds long, followed by another, then another. 14 in all. The shortest was 9 seconds. The longest was almost 4 minutes. A text appeared beneath them. These are what I sent Mom. I didn't edit them. Then another. Please don't use them against me. I sat on my bed with one shoe off and one still on. The first recording began with Paige crying, not the delicate crying Mom described whenever Paige was distraught. She sounded congested and angry. A cabinet door banged in the background. I know it's her house, she said. I know. I am aware every second I'm in that house that it belongs to Nora. She doesn't have to say it. The way she stands there when I put something in the wrong cabinet says it for her. The second message was about my asking for the key. She texted me like I was a cleaning service. Please return my key before Thursday. That's it. No, how are you settling in? No, do you need anything? Just give me the key, get your boxes, disappear. That was not what I meant. It was also exactly what I had written. In the third recording, Paige called me a hall monitor with a mortgage. I laughed before I could stop myself. Then she said, I hate that she helped me so much. I hate it because she was there and she did everything, and now I can't even be mad without sounding ungrateful. She gets to be right forever because I slept in her guest room. The laugh died. I listened to all 14 without pausing. Paige contradicted herself constantly. She said I never told her what I wanted, then said I made every preference feel like a rule. She accused me of enjoying her dependence, and 2 messages later admitted that I had repeatedly helped her search for apartments until she stopped showing up for viewings. She said I made her feel stupid. She said I was the smartest person she knew. She called me cold, rigid, exhausting, generous, loyal, and impossible to live with. In the 11th recording, her anger cracked. I miss her, she told Mom. I know I moved out 4 days ago, but I miss sitting at the counter while she cooks. I miss how she cuts apples too thin and acts like it's normal. I don't want to lose my sister over a key. I just don't want to go back there and feel like I owe her my whole life because she gave me 1 year. It had been 11 months. The correction entered my mind automatically, bright and useless. The next recording began with Mom's voice in the background. Paige must have been playing a response on speaker before recording again. Mom said, "This isn't about a key. This is about a lifelong pattern." Paige answered, "I don't want a big family thing. You've tried handling it privately." "No, I haven't. You've been trying your entire life. I've mostly been avoiding her." Mom's voice softened. "Let me help you put it into words. The final recording was from Paige after Mom sent the draft. I read it. Some of it sounds harsher than what I said, but maybe that's because I'm used to backing down. I don't know. I can't look at it anymore. If you think it will make her understand, fine. That was Paige's approval. Not informed, not enthusiastic, but real. Below the audio files, she had forwarded screenshots of her messages with Mom. Mom had sent the draft at 2:06 Sunday afternoon. At 2:19, Paige wrote, "Did you add the anniversary stuff?" Mom replied, "It demonstrates the pattern." Paige wrote, "I don't know if that's what I meant." Mom answered, "This is why you need someone outside it to recognize what is happening." At 2:27, Paige sent, "Okay." At 2:31, Mom wrote, "Your father will talk to her tonight. You do not need to expose yourself to her reaction." Paige replied, "Are you reading the whole thing?" Mom's answer came 9 minutes later. "We'll see what feels necessary." I went back to the 11th recording and listened to Paige say she missed sitting at my counter. Then I called her. She answered in a whisper. "Did you listen?" "All of them." "You listened fast." They weren't a podcast series. I could make cover art. The hall monitor with a mortgage. She laughed nervously. I took off my other shoe and sat against the headboard. "You said I made you feel stupid. You did sometimes. How?" I would ask a question, and you'd answer it like I should already know. "Give me an example." "That right there." "What?" "I tell you how I felt, and you request supporting documents. I'm trying to understand. You're trying to determine whether my feeling passes inspection." I opened my mouth, then closed it. Paige waited. "Okay," I said. "That's fair. You hate saying that." "Deeply." She laughed again, but her voice was still tight. "I didn't mean everything exactly the way it sounded," she said. "You meant it when you sent it." I was furious. So was Mom, apparently. She wasn't furious. She was worried. "Paige, I know what she did. Do you? She made it bigger. She made it hers. You think none of it was mine? I heard you. Plenty of it was yours." The words hurt more now that I understood the difference. I looked toward my bedroom door. From where I sat, I could see the guest room across the hall still open and empty. "You were right about the counters," I said. "What?" "I cleaned when I was angry instead of telling you I was angry. You cleaned when you were happy too. I clean in a range of emotions. That's true." I thought not saying anything was kinder. It was creepy. I was trying not to nag. You radiated nagging. I smiled despite myself. "I'm sorry." Paige went quiet. "For the counters?" she asked. "For making you guess what I wanted and then being disappointed when you guessed wrong. For offering help like it was unconditional when I had conditions I didn't say out loud." I heard her breathe in. "I should have paid you for utilities," she said. "Yes." "You could have asked." "Yes." "You like people noticing what you need without being told." "Yes, that's impossible, I know." The admission settled strangely in my chest. It felt less like losing and more like putting down a heavy bag I had insisted wasn't heavy. Paige said, "I shouldn't have taken the television. No, I knew it wasn't mine. I know, I was mad. And Mom said you'd probably replace it anyway." "Of course she did." "That doesn't make it her fault." "No, I'm going to fix it. You already said that." "I made an appointment." "With who?" She named a repair shop near her condo. I knew it. I almost asked what they quoted, whether she had checked the warranty, whether the scratch was in the panel or only the coating. Instead, I said, "Okay." You paused. I was overcoming myself. "You sounded like a microwave." We both laughed. Then Mom called her. I heard the vibration through the phone. "She's been calling all night," Paige said. "What does she want?" "She says I humiliated her at dinner." "You did challenge her in front of mashed potatoes." "This isn't funny." "No." She says Dad won't talk to her. He does that. He goes into the den and turns sports up so loud the windows shake. He's probably handling it. You always defend him. I just said he hides behind television. You say it like it's passive. He lets her take all the blame. That landed harder than I expected. Dad had agreed to read the letter. Dad had worn his glasses and unfolded the pages. But even in my anger, I had treated him like another person Mom had maneuvered into place. "You're right," I said. Paige made a startled sound. "I need to record tonight. Don't get greedy." Mom's call stopped. A text arrived on Paige's end. She says she doesn't know who I am anymore. She'll recognize you when she needs something. That's mean. It's also been my experience. You want me to be mad at her. I want you to stop telling me she can't hurt people because she means well. Paige didn't answer. "I'm not asking you to stop loving her," I said. "I know. No, I don't think you do. She falls apart, Nora. She has Dad. Dad disappears. Then he needs to stop. That's easy for you to say. You're good at leaving." The sentence went through me cleanly. "I left one dinner," I said. "You leave before you leave. You get calm and polite, and then the decision is already made. Would you prefer yelling? I'd prefer knowing there's still time." "For what?" "To fix it." I stared into the dark guest room. "There was time," I said. "You moved out. Maybe I didn't know how." We ended the call after midnight without deciding what we were to each other. The restaurant needed a final menu within 10 days. Paige texted me questions in smaller numbers after that, usually preceded by, "Can I ask one thing?" She chose the roast chicken because Dad liked it, negotiated coffee service because Mom insisted guests expected coffee, and discovered the cake was too large for the restaurant's refrigerator. She called 3 bakeries before finding one that could make a smaller version. "I understand why you hate candles now," she told me one afternoon. "I don't hate candles. You hate people who send pictures of candles without dimensions. That's different." Mom stopped speaking to me completely. She spoke around me instead. Aunt Linda texted that Elaine wanted everyone to know there had been a great deal of confusion about the original venue. Uncle Dean asked whether he should still bring an outdoor ashtray. I told him Marlowe's did not need his flower pot protection plan. Dad called every few days, never mentioning the argument directly. He asked whether my flight had been comfortable, whether my new locks worked, whether I knew if the pharmacy delivered on Saturdays. Each question reached toward me without touching the actual wound. The anniversary invitation remained magneted to my refrigerator. Mom had chosen a photograph from their wedding day. Dad was thin and serious in a dark suit. Mom wore daisies in her hair and laughed at something outside the frame. I had always loved that photograph because she looked like someone who could be surprised by happiness. 3 days before the dinner, Dad called. "We're confirming the number tonight," he said. "Okay, Paige says you haven't responded." I responded to the original invitation. That was before. "Before what?" He hesitated. "Before all of this. All of this started with the invitation still on my refrigerator. Your mother wants you there. Has she told you that? She doesn't have to." There it was again. The family talent for treating assumptions as acts of love. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want both my daughters at our anniversary." His voice was plain, no negotiation tucked inside it. It hurt more that way. "I love you," I said. "I know. I'm not coming." Dad breathed out slowly. "Is this punishment?" he asked. "No, it feels like it. I planned that dinner for months. If I go now, I'll spend the whole night watching everyone celebrate the result of me being removed from it. You removed yourself. After you read a letter saying my involvement was control, I said that was a mistake. You said the way it was handled was bad. You have never said you were sorry you read it." Silence. Then Dad said, "I'm sorry I read it." I closed my eyes. "I should have refused," he continued. "I should have told Paige to speak to you herself. I'm sorry. Thank you. Will you come?" "No." The answer sounded cruel even to me. Dad did not argue. When we hung up, I stood in front of the refrigerator and touched the corner of the invitation. Paige called 10 minutes later. "Dad says you're not coming." "I'm not. You know they'll say you ruined it." "They already say I ruined it." She was quiet. Then she asked, "What are you going to do that night?" "I don't know." It was the first anniversary plan I had made that required nothing from anyone else. The invitation stayed on my refrigerator. I considered taking it down, but that felt ceremonial in a way I didn't want. It was still my parents' anniversary. I was still the person who had spent 4 evenings comparing fonts before Mom chose the first one. Paige called the following afternoon. "The restaurant needs the final seating chart. Then send it." I did. Mom changed 3 tables. To what? She moved Aunt Linda next to Uncle Dean because she thinks Linda can stop him from talking about politics. Aunt Linda starts half his political arguments. I know that. You know that. Mom thinks Linda is calming because she wears linen. What do you need from me? Do you remember why you put the Carmichaels near the door? Mr. Carmichael uses a walker. Right. Okay. Anything else? There was a pause. Do you think I should change the tables back? That is a decision. I'm aware. You asked for information. I gave you information. Nora, if I answer and Mom hates it, I'm controlling the seating chart from exile. You're not in exile. You're refusing to come. That's fair. She sighed. I'll move Mr. Carmichael. Linda can fight Dean from anywhere. Also fair. The next call concerned the cake stand, then a missing vegetarian meal for Dad's former business partner, who had become vegetarian 2 years earlier but still ate bacon when nobody was looking. Then the restaurant wanted to know who would take the flower arrangements after dinner. Not me, I said. I didn't ask you. You were about to. I was going to ask whether Mom likes hydrangeas enough to take 6 of them home. She likes them enough to make you take 6 of them home. Paige groaned. By the day of the anniversary, her messages had become brief and practical. Did Dad want sparkling water? Yes, but not flavored. Which side is his bad knee? Right. Seat him where he can extend it without blocking the aisle. Did Mom really say no speeches longer than 3 minutes? She meant everyone except herself. Paige sent a skull emoji. At 4:30, my phone began filling with photographs. The private room at Marlowe's looked better than it had in the original pictures. Paige had arranged the tables around the stone fireplace instead of lining them in rows. Cream cloths covered the brown carpet almost completely. Small arrangements of white roses and greenery sat in low glass bowls. The candles had actual dimensions. In one photograph, Dad stood near the entrance in a dark suit, leaning on his cane without trying to hide it. Mom wore a pale blue dress and the pearl earrings Dad had given her for their 30th anniversary. She looked beautiful. I enlarged the picture until their faces blurred. Then I put my phone down and went outside. The canopy chalk marks had faded to pale blue shadows. I scrubbed them from the patio with a stiff brush and a bucket of soapy water. The work was harder than it needed to be, which was probably why I chose it. At 6, I made a hamburger and ate it at the small metal table, beneath the string lights. Only 3 sample sections still worked. The rest flickered whenever the wind moved the cord. Music drifted from Gwen's house 3 doors down. A dog barked somewhere behind the fence. A plane crossed the darkening sky, low enough that I could see the landing lights. My phone vibrated on the table. Aunt Linda had sent, "We miss you." Shoes were fine. Uncle Dean sent a photograph of an ashtray. Dad sent nothing. Mom sent nothing. Paige wrote, "People keep asking where you are." I typed, "Tell them I'm not there." She replied, "Very helpful." Another message appeared. "Mom is telling people you had a work emergency." I stared at it. "Then tell them whatever you want." "What do you want me to tell them?" "The truth." "Which part?" "That I decided not to come." 3 dots appeared and vanished. I turned the phone off. The silence afterward was not peaceful. It was thick and physical. I heard every car on the street, every fork touching my plate. I thought about Dad's speech and whether he would look toward the door. I thought about Mom greeting guests with one hand extended, her attention split between the person in front of her and whatever detail might be wrong behind them. I thought about Paige standing near the restaurant entrance with a list in her hand, answering questions I could have answered faster. For a while, I hated myself. Not enough to go. I carried my plate inside, wrapped the leftover hamburger, and washed the same glass twice. At 8:15, I turned my phone back on. There were 41 messages. The anniversary rescue group had become a stream of photographs. Mom and Dad cutting the cake. Aunt Linda lifting her wine glass, Uncle Dean standing near a planter with no cigarette visible, which suggested someone had intervened. Paige crouched beside Dad's chair, adjusting something under the table. A video showed Dad giving a speech. I watched with the sound off first. He held the microphone in one hand and Mom's fingers in the other. Mom was smiling up at him. Halfway through, Dad looked toward the camera and his expression changed. I turned up the volume. 45 years means there are a lot of versions of two people inside a marriage, he said. Some we're proud of and some we hope the other person has forgotten. Elaine remembers everything, unfortunately. Guests laughed. Mom squeezed his hand. Dad continued. We've built a life with two daughters who are different in every possible way except their determination. Paige put this evening together and she did a beautiful job. The camera moved toward Paige. She waved without smiling. And Nora, Dad said, did much of the work that got it started. She isn't here tonight, but I love her, and I wish she were. Mom's smile held, but her eyes moved away from him. The video ended there. I replayed the last sentence. Then I turned the phone off again. At 11:47, someone knocked on my front door. I looked through the peephole. Paige stood beneath the porch light in a dark green dress, holding her shoes in one hand and a white bakery box in the other. Her hair had fallen loose from whatever arrangement she had started with. I opened the door. She looked at the new lock. That's shiny. It's new. I heard. She lifted the box. Cake. I thought it was too big. It was. There is more in Mom's refrigerator than there is air. I stepped aside. Paige walked to the kitchen in bare feet. A red line crossed the top of each foot where her shoes had pressed. She set the cake box on the counter and leaned both hands beside it. You missed a lovely evening, she said. Did I? No. I got 2 plates. The cake was chocolate with raspberry filling, one of Mom's combinations. Paige cut slices that leaned sideways. We ate standing at the counter. How bad? I asked. Do you want the list chronologically or by category? Surprise me. The florist delivered one arrangement short. The restaurant put regular coffee at the decaf station. Mr. Carmichael couldn't get his walker past table 4 because Mom added 2 chairs without telling me. Uncle Dean smoked beside the service entrance, which set off no alarms but caused 3 servers to believe the building was on fire. Good start. Aunt Linda told Mom the speeches were beginning before Mom was ready. Mom told Linda that some people value punctuality over grace. That went well, I assume. Linda gave a 7-minute toast about patience. I laughed. Paige took another bite of cake. The food was good, she said. Dad had a good time. Mostly. Mom looked happy when people were looking. That sounds like her. She kept asking me where things were. The guest book, the extra candles, Dad's evening pills, her lipstick, the card from the Carmichaels. Where was the lipstick? In her purse. Bold location. I found it while she was holding the purse. Paige laughed, then put down her fork. I didn't know, she said. About the lipstick? About all of it. I waited. The little things, she continued. Every person asks one question and each question seems reasonable, but you're the only one they're asking. Then Mom asks why you look tense in photographs. Yes. The restaurant manager started coming to me for everything. At one point, I was holding Dad's cane, Mom's purse, the microphone, and a bag of rolls Aunt Linda wanted to take home. That's an advanced level. I wanted to throw all of it into the fireplace. That would have improved the carpet. She looked down. I thought you liked being the person everyone asked. Sometimes I did. That was the uncomfortable truth. Being necessary could feel like love if nobody examined it too closely. Tonight would have been easier if you were there, Paige said. I know. I kept being mad at you for not coming. Then I'd realize I was mad because I wanted to hand you something. Also fair. No, it isn't. She picked raspberry filling from the edge of her plate. Mom thanked me in her speech, she said. She said I had stepped up when unexpected circumstances threatened the celebration. What did you say? Nothing during her speech. And after? I told Aunt Linda you chose not to come because of what happened at Sunday dinner. My stomach tightened. Why? Because Mom told her you were in Boston. I came back weeks ago. I know. Did you announce the letter? No. Linda already knew about the meet. I smiled despite myself. Paige continued. I didn't give details. I just said you didn't have a work emergency and that you had done the early planning. How did Mom react? She said I embarrassed her. Again. I'm getting efficient. And Dad? He told her to stop. I set down my fork. Those exact words? First he said, Elaine, enough. She said nobody appreciated what she had endured to keep the family together. Then he said, we created this situation ourselves. I tried to picture him saying it. Dad, who softened every disagreement until nobody could find its edges. What did Mom say? She asked, when I had turned both of you against her. That sounds right. She left the restaurant before the flowers were packed. Who took the hydrangeas? I have 6 arrangements in my car. I laughed so hard I had to cover my mouth. Paige laughed too, but tears appeared in her eyes. She wiped them angrily with the heel of her hand. I'm exhausted, she said. I know. I don't want you to say you told me so. I wasn't going to. You were thinking it. I was thinking you should put the flowers in water. That's the same thing in your language. I found 2 large mixing bowls and filled them. Paige followed me outside, still barefoot, and carried the arrangements from her car one at a time. Mom had chosen white hydrangeas, not roses. In the porch light, they looked soft and enormous. We arranged them across my kitchen counter until the room resembled a polite funeral. Paige sat on a stool while I made tea. Without asking, I sliced an apple onto a plate, each piece thinner than necessary. She watched my hands. I did miss this, she said. I placed the plate between us. Missing it isn't the same as getting it back, I said. I know. For once, neither of us tried to turn that into something easier. Paige ate 3 apple slices before she stood. I should go, she said. The flowers are going to freeze in my car. They're in bowls. The bowls are yours. You can bring them back. She looked at me. I'll bring them back, she said carefully. I believe you intend to. That joke is retired. She carried the hydrangeas out 2 at a time. On the last trip, she stopped at the door. Are you okay? She asked. I don't know. About missing it? About all of it. She nodded, as if that answer made sense. I'm glad you came here, I said. Her face softened. Then I added, you still don't have a key. There she is. She left laughing. The next morning, my kitchen looked as if a wedding had surrendered there. White petals had fallen around the sink. One arrangement leaned sideways in a mixing bowl, heavy enough to pull the stems beneath the water. I divided the flowers into smaller jars and carried one to Gwen. I put another on my desk. The rest stayed on the counter until the edges browned. Mom did not call. Dad left one voicemail thanking me for the work I had done before the anniversary. His language was stiff, almost formal, as if he were acknowledging a contribution to a museum exhibit. I called him back anyway. Did you have a good time? I asked. I did. Did your knee survive? Paige kept moving my cane. I saw photographic evidence. She was trying to keep people from tripping over it. She should have leaned it against your chair. That's what you always do. We both heard the sentence. Dad cleared his throat. The restaurant was nice. Paige did a good job. She did. I waited for him to mention Mom leaving angry. He didn't. Are you still sleeping in the den? I asked. I'm not sleeping there. Watching sports at full volume then. It was a good game. Who played? Another silence. I don't recall. Dad, I needed some quiet. Then turn the television off. He sighed. Your mother is hurt. She has my number. She believes you owe her an apology, too. For what? For making private family disagreements part of the anniversary. I wasn't there. That is her point. Mom made my absence part of the anniversary when she lied about where I was. She was trying to protect you from questions. No, she was protecting herself from answers. Dad didn't argue. I sat at my desk looking at the hydrangeas Paige had brought. One white petal had gone translucent along the edge. You told her you both created this, I said. Paige told you. Yes. I shouldn't have waited until the restaurant was empty. No, I'm not very good at doing things at the right time. You're good at making tea afterward. He gave a small laugh. I'm learning the pill organizer, he said. Any casualties? Thursday evening remains unstable. Put a piece of tape over the cracked lid. I bought a new one. Then Thursday evening has every advantage. Dad laughed again, then grew quiet. I miss you, he said. It was not Mom misses you, not we miss you. The words belong to him. I miss you too. Would you come by? I will, but I'm not coming over to negotiate with Mom through you. I understand. And you don't need permission to visit me. I know. Do you? I'm trying to. He came the following Saturday carrying a paper bag from the bakery with the lemon tarts. I bought 6, he said. There are only 2 of us. Your mother says they freeze. Mom hates lemon. She knows many things about freezing. He sat at my kitchen counter while I made coffee. Without asking, he moved his cane out of the walkway and hooked it over the back of the stool. We talked about the anniversary, but not as a trial. He told me Aunt Linda had hidden Uncle Dean's cigarettes inside the restaurant's lost and found drawer. He admitted Mom's speech had run 11 minutes. He described watching Paige circulate with the guest list in one hand and Mom's purse in the other. I should have helped her more, he said. You were being celebrated. I've used that excuse for 45 years. The sentence surprised both of us. Dad stared into his coffee. Your mother believes managing people is the same as caring for them, he said. I've let her do it because it made my life easier. Yes. I didn't think about what it cost you girls. You thought about it sometimes. Probably. You just decided the cost was lower than upsetting her. He looked up. I expected him to defend himself. Instead, he nodded. That sounds like me. The honesty made it harder to stay angry in a simple way. Before he left, he paused beside the kitchen junk drawer. Do you still have our old key? In there. You should throw it away. I might. He nodded, then let himself out through the front door without asking for a new one. Paige returned the mixing bowls individually. One appeared on my porch Tuesday evening with a grocery store bouquet inside it. The second came Friday, carrying 3 oranges and a note that said, I washed this one twice. The third remained missing long enough that I assumed it had moved into her condo permanently. She brought it the next Sunday afternoon. The television was in the back of her car. She stood on my porch with the bowl under one arm and my old brass key in her open palm. I brought everything, she said. You brought a bowl and a key. Look in the car. The television had been wrapped in a clean quilt. Paige had taped foam over each corner, and the power cord was coiled instead of trailing beneath it. You got it fixed? The line is gone. How much? Enough. I looked at her. I paid it, she said. I didn't ask you to. I know. She handed me the key. The tiny nick near the bottom was exactly where I remembered it. Then she took an envelope from her purse. What's this? Storage rent. I said I would cover the month. I know. I'm paying you back anyway. The envelope held cash, exact except for an extra $5. You overpaid. Gate inconvenience fee. I caused no gate inconvenience. You omitted the pound sign. It was on the sign. I'm not taking $5 back. You have 9 purses. I can hide it in one. You don't have access to my purses. Progress. We carried the television inside together. Paige took the heavier end before I could argue. We set it against the guest room wall beneath the empty bracket. The room no longer looked like she had just left. I had changed the sheet, removed the chipped mug, and moved my sewing table beside the window. It was becoming a room with no assigned emergency. Paige noticed. You're using it, she said. It's a room. I know. You can still stay for a night if there's a normal reason. What's a normal reason? Your air conditioner breaks. You drink too much at dinner. A tree falls through your roof. That escalated. What isn't a normal reason is you deciding my house is the permanent solution to your next crisis. She looked at the television. I understand. I also won't lend you money. I didn't ask. I'm telling you before you do. Fair. And if you're angry with me, you tell me. Not Mom. Can I tell a therapist? Yes. A bartender? Depends on the tip. She smiled. Then she reached into her purse again and removed a yellow folder. I recognized Mom's handwriting on the tab, Paige/Nora. My stomach tightened. Where did you get that? Mom gave it to me. She gave you a folder with our names on it? After the anniversary. We argued. I asked her to show me exactly what I had said that justified the letter. She told me she had saved everything because she knew someday people would accuse her of twisting it. That sounded so completely like Mom that I believed it. Paige placed the folder on the sewing table. Inside was a printed transcript of several of her voice messages. Mom had underlined phrases in blue ink, drawn arrows between paragraphs, and written alternatives in the margins. Next to, I feel like she remembers every favor, Mom had written in visible ledger. Beside. Sometimes her help makes me feel worse. She had written poisons kindness with conditions. On a separate page in Mom's handwriting was the sentence about confusing being needed with being loved. Below it, she had noted, "This connects Nora's behavior toward family and anniversary." The words looked smaller in ink than they had sounded in Dad's voice. Paige stood beside me. "I approved the letter," she said. I kept looking at the pages. I knew she had made it harsher. I knew I hadn't said some of those things. I let her tell me that harsher meant clearer, because it was easier than coming here and saying I was angry. I touched the edge of the folder. "She told you not to come." I was relieved when she did. Her voice shook, but she didn't look away. "I let Dad read it because I wanted you to have to sit there and hear it without interrupting me, even though I wasn't there. I wanted them on my side. I wanted you to feel outnumbered. The honesty hurt in a different place than excuses would have." "I'm sorry," she said, "not because Mom manipulated me." She did, but I still agreed. Not because I was upset. I was, but I still knew it would hurt you. "I'm sorry I signed off on something that used your private words against you. I'm sorry I stayed home while they read it." I looked at my sister. There was no but waiting behind her apology. "I accept that," I said. Her face crumpled briefly before she caught it. "It doesn't make everything the way it was," I added. "I know. You won't have a key. I know. And I may say no when you ask for help. You should. I will probably say it badly sometimes. You will." I almost smiled. "You can point out the tone once, per day, per conversation, negotiable." We left the folder on the sewing table. I did not photograph it or send copies to relatives. I did not call Dad and demand he inspect Mom's handwriting. I had spent weeks wanting proof, but once it existed, it felt less like a weapon than a map of a place I no longer intended to live. Mom called that evening. Her name filled my phone for the first time since the anniversary. I answered. "Hello?" She inhaled softly. "Paige says she saw you." "She did. She took you the folder." "Yes, I hope you're satisfied." "No." That seemed to unsettle her. "Well," she said, "your father thinks enough time has passed." "For what? For us to have dinner like a family?" The invitation sat between us, wrapped in Dad's opinion. "If you want me to come," I said, "ask me yourself." A long silence followed. Then Mom said, "Will you come to Sunday dinner?" "Only if everyone speaks for themselves. No letters, no messages delivered for somebody else, no explaining what Paige or Dad really means. You're giving me rules in my own house. I'm telling you what I require to enter it." She went quiet again. I expected her to refuse. Instead, she said, 6 o'clock. Then she hung up. The call ended before I could decide whether 6 o'clock was an agreement or another instruction. Paige called 5 minutes later. Mom invited me to dinner. She invited me too. Did she sound weird? She sounded like Mom. So, yes. I sat at the kitchen table. The yellow folder was still upstairs on the sewing table. I had considered putting it away, but every drawer felt too much like hiding it, and every visible surface felt too much like displaying it. "Are we going together?" Paige asked. "No." "Why not?" "Because then we arrive as a side. Aren't we a side?" "No, We're two people who have compared information. That sounds like the world's least fun detective agency. We don't have matching coats. You wear black every day. So do you. Fine. We're not a side. And if you disagree with me at dinner, say it. I usually do. Say it to me, not Mom. Paige was quiet for a moment. Okay, she said. Same rule for you. Okay. Should I bring something? Ask the person hosting. I did. Mom said, whatever you think is appropriate. That means wine. I thought it meant flowers. She still has emotional damage from hydrangeas. I'll bring wine. I arrived at 5:56 with nothing in my hands. Mom opened the door and looked automatically past me as if a casserole might be waiting on the walkway. You didn't bring your purse? She asked. It's on my shoulder. I meant, never mind. Come in. The white plates were on the table, but there were no cloth napkins and no duplicate pages beside my setting. Dad stood when I entered, using one hand on the table for leverage. He wore the blue plaid shirt with the snaps. You came, he said. I said I would. I know. He hugged me. Dad was not a dramatic hugger. He held people briefly and patted their backs twice, the way he might test a wall for hollowness. This time he kept one arm around me longer than usual. Mom watched from the kitchen doorway. When Dad released me, she said, the roast needs 10 more minutes. Do you need help? I asked. The question surprised both of us. Mom glanced into the kitchen. No, I have it. Okay. She seemed disappointed by how easily I accepted the answer. I sat in the living room with Dad. His new pill organizer rested on the side table, all 14 lids intact. Each compartment had a small label beneath it in his blocky handwriting. Thursday evening looks stable, I said. He followed my gaze. I taped a list inside the cabinet, too. Very advanced. I've been studying. The doorbell rang. Mom walked past us, then stopped and looked at Dad. Will you answer that? He pushed himself up with a grunt, took his cane, and went to the door. Another small thing. Mom could have answered it in 4 steps. Dad required 12 and a pause. But she had asked him, and he had gone without looking at me to take over. Paige entered carrying 2 bottles of wine. One red, one white. She announced. I refused to guess. You could have called, Mom said. I did. You asked while I was at the grocery store. Yes, I couldn't think with all that noise. Then this is what happened. Paige handed the bottles to Dad. He examined the labels as if one might contain instructions. Mom looked at Paige, then at me. You spoke before coming? Directly, Paige said. Mom's mouth tightened. Paige noticed. I wasn't asking permission. I didn't say you were. You made the face. What face? I got up. I'm not translating faces. Paige glanced at me. Fair. Dad took the wine into the kitchen. Mom remained in the living room with us. She folded her arms, unfolded them, then smoothed the front of her sweater. It was the green cardigan with the pearl buttons. The bottom one I had repaired still held. I would like tonight to be pleasant, she said. So would I, Paige replied. Mom looked at me. So would I said. That requires everyone to make an effort. Is that directed at someone? I asked. She inhaled through her nose. It is directed at everyone. Then okay. The roast rested while Dad opened the red wine. He broke the cork and tried to push the remaining half into the bottle. Mom reached for it. Then she stopped herself. Do you want help? She asked. I have it. He did not have it. For 3 minutes, he dug at the cork with the screw while small pieces fell onto the counter. Paige offered to strain the wine through a coffee filter. Mom closed her eyes. I found the second corkscrew in the drawer and placed it beside Dad without taking the bottle. Thank you, he said. With the better tool, he pulled the cork free. Mom watched the entire operation as though we were defusing something. At the table, Dad attempted to carve the roast. His first slice was an inch thick at one end and transparent at the other. I can do that, I said. He looked at the knife, then at me. Would you? Yes. I carved because I wanted dinner before midnight, not because anyone had arranged my value around the task. The distinction was invisible to everyone else. It was still real. Mom had made the salad dressing herself. It had too much vinegar. I ate it without comment. Paige took one bite and reached for the salt. "This is sharp." Mom looked at me immediately. "I didn't say anything," I said. "You were thinking it. I'm allowed." Dad coughed into his napkin to cover a laugh. For a while, we discussed ordinary things. The restaurant had refunded part of the catering deposit after Paige found a cancellation clause buried in the agreement. Aunt Linda had mailed Mom photographs from the anniversary, including one of Uncle Dean asleep beside the fireplace. Dad's former business partner had eaten the vegetarian meal and 2 bacon-wrapped appetizers. Mom asked about my Boston meetings. She listened to the answer without turning it into evidence that work mattered more than family. It was so careful that it could not last. Halfway through dinner, she placed her fork down. "I think we need to address what happened." Dad's shoulders lowered. Paige reached for her wine. I said, "Okay." Mom looked at me as if she had expected resistance. "I have had time to think," she began. I recognized that the letter was not handled in the best possible way. "Handled," Paige repeated. Mom's gaze moved to her. "Please let me finish." Paige looked at me. I shook my head slightly. Not because Mom deserved control of the room, but because interrupting before she said anything would give her somewhere to hide. Mom continued, "Your sister was in pain. She came to me because she did not believe she could speak to you without being dismissed." Paige put down her glass. "That isn't what I said." The sentence stopped Mom completely. Paige's voice shook, but she kept going. "I said I didn't want a confrontation. I said I was angry and didn't know how to talk to Nora. You told me she would dismiss me. You told me I needed you to make it clear. I was trying to give language to what you were feeling. You gave me your language. You agreed with it." "Yes," Paige said. "I did. I wanted it to hurt her." Mom blinked. Paige looked across the table at me. "I wanted her to sit there and hear bad things about herself. I let you do it because I was too afraid to be in the room. That part is mine." Mom's lips parted, but Paige turned back to her. "The rest is yours. You added the anniversary. You used things Nora told you privately. Don't explain me like I'm not sitting here." Mom stared at her plate. Dad's hand rested beside his wine glass. His fingers flexed once, then became still. Mom said, "You gave Nora the folder." "I did. That folder contained things I saved in confidence. You wrote Nora's private words in it. I was trying to understand the pattern." "You were trying to prove it," I said. Mom looked up at me. "I knew this would happen." "What?" "You would go through every line and make me the villain. Paige would apologize, Robert would retreat, and I would be left holding all of it." Dad shifted. "I'm not retreating. You sat in the den for 3 days. I was angry. At me. At myself, too." "That's easy to say now." "No," he said. "It isn't." Mom looked at him. Dad set his napkin beside his plate. "I read the letter," he said. "Elaine didn't force me. I knew some of the phrases were hers, and I read them anyway because I thought Nora would be easier to manage afterward than you would be if I refused." Mom went very still. His admission was not polished. That was why I believed it. "You told me you agreed," she said. "I did agree. So why am I the only one being attacked?" "You aren't," I said. Dad apologized to me. Her eyes moved toward him. "He went to your house." "Yes. You didn't tell me." Dad's face hardened in a way I rarely saw. "I don't need permission to see my daughter. I never said you did. You didn't have to." The room went quiet. Mom reached for her water, but her fingers missed the glass by an inch. She rested her hand on the table instead. "What do you want from me?" she asked. Her voice was smaller, not fragile, not helpless, just tired. "I want you to stop telling us what the other one means," I said. "If Paige is angry with me, let her be angry. If Dad disagrees with you, let him say it. If I tell you something privately, it stays private unless I say otherwise. And if I'm worried, be worried. If I can see you're hurting each other, tell each of us what you think as yourself. That won't change anything. It might not." Mom shook her head. You think I enjoy being in the middle? I think you enjoy being necessary. The words hung there. They were close to the accusation in the letter. Close enough that I felt the irony before Mom did. She looked at me sharply. So now you're using that against me. No, I'm saying I understand it. Her face changed. I thought of the wedding photograph on the invitation. Mom laughing at something beyond the camera. Before marriage, daughters, dinners, medication, anniversaries, before she had made herself the bridge between every person she loved and then panicked whenever they tried to reach each other directly. You don't trust us to stay connected without you, I said. Mom looked down. I have spent years listening to both of you complain about each other, she said. Then you sit together and act like I invented every problem. You didn't, Paige said. I never said she did, I added. You both called me. You both asked what the other one meant. You both wanted me to fix it. She was right. That mattered too. I did, I said, and I won't anymore. Paige nodded. Me neither. Mom gave a short, wounded laugh. How convenient. You learn a lesson and I become the mistake. No, I said. The mistake was letting you do something we should have done ourselves. And the letter? She asked. The letter was a betrayal. She flinched. I did not soften it. You use things I told you because I trusted you, I said. You placed them in Paige's mouth and had Dad read them to me. You don't get to call that help. Mom's eyes filled, but the tears did not fall. I was afraid, she said. Of what? That Paige would lose you, that you would decide you were done with all of us. So you made me sit through a letter accusing me of leaving people. I thought if you understood how serious it was, you would change. I did change. Mom looked toward the kitchen, toward the empty counter where my roasting pan had sat that night. I know, she said. The answer carried 6 weeks of missing errands, a smaller anniversary, Dad learning his own medication, Paige making her own decisions, and a key that no longer opened anything. Mom folded and unfolded the edge of her napkin. I am sorry, she said. I am sorry I used what you told me. I am sorry I wrote words for Paige and pretended that made them hers. And I am sorry I had your father read them while she stayed home. She looked at Paige. I should have told you to go speak to your sister. Yes, Paige said. Mom's mouth tightened at the lack of comfort. Then she looked at Dad. And you should have refused. I should have, he said. Nobody rescued her from the apology. Nobody told her she had meant well. The room remained uncomfortable, and she survived it. After dinner, Mom brought out apple crisp. No mushrooms, she said as she set it down. I laughed before I meant to. She smiled a little. The crisp was too sweet. Dad added ice cream. Paige asked me directly whether I wanted coffee, and I said no. Mom started to say that I never drank coffee after 8, then stopped. When I stood to leave, Dad did not ask me to check his pill organizer. Mom did not hand me leftovers or a grocery list. Paige did not ask for a ride, money, or help carrying anything. Mom walked me to the door. Next Sunday? She asked. I'll let you know. Her face tightened, but she nodded. Outside, Paige called from the porch behind me. I'll call you tomorrow. You just told me, I said. I'm practicing. Dad laughed inside the house. I walked to my car carrying only my coat and purse. Behind me, the porch light stayed on, and the 4 of them did not fall apart when my hands were empty.